Chapter 659. A few days after Rinpochen returned to Daeyo, he finally saw the egg-kicking maniac, Li Fu. He looked the same as before and didn't seem to be in dire straits. He wasn't missing an arm or a leg. It seemed like his first parachute jump was a success, and the Empress's advancement to the third most powerful expert in the world had to be delayed. Li Fu was also riding a Heilang Jun, a wild boar that was 3 to 4 meters tall. It was covered in short, grayish-brown hair and emitted energy waves that weren't weaker than an earthwheel expert. With this kind of strength, Heilang Jun could be considered an overlord in the forest. No animals dared to provoke it, and beasts of the same level had to avoid it. However, this fellow was a little miserable at the moment. His fangs were broken in half, his 2 small eyes were of different sizes, and there was a bump on his forehead. The hair on the back of his neck had also been pulled out, making him look miserable. However, his ferocity didn't diminish at all, and his eyes glowed fiercely at everyone he saw. Then, Li Fu punched him in the head, causing him to scream in pain. Li Fu jumped down from the Heilang Jun and casually said, "I'll give it to you." As soon as Li Fu jumped down, the Heilang Jun turned to run, but a few of Rinpochien's guards immediately surrounded it. This Heilang Jun wasn't weak and had a huge body. If it recklessly charged around in the city, it would probably hurt a lot of people. Hu was the first to punch the Heilang Jun on the head. As a result, Hu was sent flying and smashed into the wall of Qing's residence. Rinpochen smacked his lips. Ever since the establishment of this academy, the walls of Qing's residence seemed to have been demolished a few times. As expected, a few burly men jumped out of the Shi residence to argue with Hu. Hu was held down by them just as he was about to get up from the pile of rubble. He was immediately enraged and almost fought with them again. Fortunately, the egg-kicking maniac and Heilang Jun were still there to take the blame, so the matter was settled. Meanwhile, the battle between the man and the pig continued. Although the Heilang Jun was also at the earthwheel level, it was much stronger than the aboriginals. Coupled with its thick skin and flesh, it took the guards a lot of effort to break all 4 of its legs and pin it to the ground. "Sir, what should we do with it?" Hu asked Rinpochen as he vented his anger by punching it repeatedly on its head. "Send them back to the palace, kill them, and eat their meat." Rinpochen said casually. It wasn't easy to find this kind of earthwheel-level livestock. Their bodies contained a lot of blood essence, and it would be good to eat as a supplement. Heilang Jun seemed to be able to hear Rinpochen's words and began to struggle violently again. Unfortunately, all 4 of his legs had been broken and his struggles were futile. He was once again beaten up by the guards and carried back to the palace. "How does it feel to be in the sky?" Rinpochen turned around and smiled at Li Fu. He carefully sized up Li Fu and found that he was in a good state of mind and had a ruddy complexion. Although it's higher than the highest mountain peak, it's still too low, and the time is too short. "I didn't see anything. If it's a little higher, with a little more time, maybe we'll find something," Li Fu said bluntly. "But it feels pretty good. This is the first time I've felt so close to the sky. If you say that you can make something better, then this old man will wait for you. However, you have to be quick. This old man has waited for so many years, and I can't wait any longer. When I was in the sky, I felt the excitement that I hadn't felt in a long time. Even my heart felt younger. I always thought how good it would be if I could fly," Li Fu said with a yearning look on his face. "In fact, even if you flew higher, you probably wouldn't be able to see anything unless you used a rocket to fly. Then, you would be able to see a big ball." Rinpochen thought to himself, but didn't say it out loud. Instead, he smiled and said, "I'm afraid that you will have to wait. It's mainly due to various restrictions, and it's very difficult to improve greatly in a short period of time. If you can destroy the Yun nation, it will be faster. Daeyo's resources are too little." Li Fu rejected him without hesitation. "I can't do that. If you are willing, I can bring you to Great Xia. I have an old relationship with Xia Bailong's grandfather, and he will give me some face. The grass on Xia Bailong's grave is already 15 meters tall." Rinpochen was speechless. This news had been spreading like wildfire in Lan City some time ago. Wasn't this news a little too out of touch? That little fellow is dead? However, it doesn't matter. As long as the successor is his descendant, he will give me some face. Li Fu stroked his beard. The problem is that I don't intend to give you face. Rinpoche rolled his eyes, turned around, and walked back into the academy. Li Fu chuckled, didn't take it seriously, and disappeared in a flash. In the afternoon, there was a very important matter to attend to in the academy. After more than 2 months, with the combined efforts of 40 to 50 students and 6 to 7 blacksmiths, the locomotive was finally completed. According to Rinpoche's request, the backyard of the academy had already laid out 50 meters of rails, or rather, light rails. Each meter of the rails weighed 50 kilograms, and both sides added up to 100 kilograms, which was far lower than the standard of rails. These rails were made from all the iron ingots in the academy. In the afternoon, both the old and new students were waiting in the backyard of the academy. More than 100 people were scattered in the courtyard, but it wasn't considered crowded. In front of them was the 50-meter-long rail with a slight curve, and above it was a locomotive that looked more like a tractor. It was still a barrel-shaped steam engine. Below it were 2 rows of metal wheels of different sizes and metal arms of various sizes. There wasn't even a carriage at the back, only a stove for adding fire. It took more than 2 months to build this thing, and most of the time was spent on the metal arms of the wheels. This time, it was more complicated than the previous time, and it was almost completely redesigned. "Let's begin," Rinpoche said. Then, like the previous time, they started a fire, added coal, and added water. After a while, the cigarette butt above the locomotive emitted bursts of black smoke, and the train began to move slowly. Success! Many students cheered and clapped excitedly. Although they had succeeded the last time, they were traveling on rails this time, and all the components had been replaced with metal. Before the start, many students were still nervous and afraid that something would go wrong. Fortunately, everything went smoothly at this time, and no problems occurred. Everyone was relieved. In particular, when they saw the locomotive drawing an arc along the rails in the courtyard and getting faster and faster, the smiles on everyone's faces grew wider and wider, and their faces were full of pride. "Is there a break this time?" Rinpoche suddenly asked. "What's a break?" Shurgan asked. "How do we stop?" Rinpoche pointed at the locomotive and asked. Shurgan, "Everyone." Then, the locomotive left the rails, smashed through the courtyard wall, crossed the street, and smashed through the wall of Shurching's house. Finally, it fell to the ground with a loud bang. The students rushed over like a swarm of bees. Then, they heard Shurching's angry voice in the courtyard. "It's you guys again? Sixth uncle, listen to my explanation." Shurgan pulled the arm of a burly man and shouted, "Hurry up and carry him back." "What explanation?" "Just wait to be beaten up." The burly man picked Shurgan up like a chick and shook him in the air. Suddenly, a small round mirror, 2 metal rods, a handkerchief, and a money bag fell to the ground. When Rinpoche arrived, Shurching stood there with his hands on his waist, smiled kindly at Rinpoche, and said, "Do you have a grudge against my wall? You dismantled it in the morning, and now you're doing it again. Maybe the feng shui of your courtyard isn't very good." Rinpoche said seriously. Chapter 660. The locomotive experiment was a success. Rinpoche sent the students to research the deceleration and braking system for the locomotive while he went to the Empress to ask for another 5,000 kilograms of iron. The next goal was to build a circular railway track with a diameter of 400 meters outside Lan City. After all, it wasn't enough for the train to run. There were still other aspects that needed to be tested, such as its load capacity, speed, and so on. Dayo wasn't rich in iron resources. It was impossible to build a long railway track at the moment. The circular railway track was the best choice. However, this time around, Rinpoche wanted to make a standard rail that weighed 50 kilograms per meter. The 2 sides would be equivalent to a circular rail that was 20 meters per meter. The circumference would be 1,300 meters, which was equivalent to 23,000 kilograms. This was the output of Dayo in the past 4 months. In the next few days, there was inevitably a quarrel in the imperial court. Even though it was all thanks to Rinpoche that Mount Damo could produce one. 8 million kilograms of iron per year, Daeyeo's current shortfall was too big. Everyone wasn't optimistic about the project that the academy was working on. Or rather, it was a waste of bricks. She liked the feel of bricks more and more. Ever since she had this magical weapon, the Empress had never missed her target. She found great joy in it. Now, the Empress used about a cart of bricks every week, and this consumption rate was still increasing. With the iron mine, manpower was still needed. Ren Baqien asked Tong Jinye to make the grinding tools and molded the railway track. He also brought 1,000 prisoners from the prisoner camp to lay the roadbed with gravel, lay the ties, and lay the railway track. It took a full 20 days to lay the ties and start laying the railway track. Ren Baqien didn't stay idle during this period of time. On one hand, he planned to expand the academy. On the other hand, he started to build the library of the Black Bamboo Residence, which was also the first library in Daeyeou. After all, Ren Baqien still had a large number of secret manuals. It would be a waste to leave them in the warehouse to rot. There was no harm in letting these students take a look. The construction of the library was very fast. It was completed in less than 20 days. In any case, it was an ordinary brick building with 3 floors and an area of more than 400 square meters. Inside, there were wooden bookshelves, tables, and chairs. Other than these, there were no other decorations. From the outside, it looked simple and crude. However, the value of this library was immeasurable in Daeyeou. Most of the imperial court officials in Daeyeou only had a collection of a few dozen books. Some of them only had a few hundred books, let alone the commoners. In this library, Ren Baqien had placed tens of thousands of books that covered all aspects. It was something that no other book collection could compare to, and it was enough to excite everyone. The third level contained all kinds of secret manuals that were brought back from Tianjing Basin and some unimportant martial arts that the Empress had collected. Although it wasn't too important, it was still a pretty good cultivation technique for commoners. Although the aboriginals had great potential, they also faced the same problem as the ancient Chinese. It was very difficult to obtain knowledge, especially when it came to things like martial arts manuals. On the one hand, the secret manuals collected by the library could be used as a reference for students. On the other hand, it could also benefit many commoner disciples. The second floor was filled with professional books that Ren Baqien had brought back from Earth, including physics, chemistry, manufacturing, Western medicine, business, and even the Analects of Confucius and Tao Te Ching. As for the first floor, there were some miscellaneous books, but it was precisely these books that made the students unable to move their feet. The books in the library could only be read in the library and could not be taken out. However, this didn't dampen the enthusiasm of the students. Ever since the news of the construction of the library spread, these students began to look forward to it, and quite a few of them came to Ren Baqien to inquire about it. It even spread outside the academy and into the ears of some court officials. These students waited for more than 20 days and immediately rushed in on the opening day. Many students rushed to the secret manuals on the third floor, especially the commoner disciples, as they could still find a lot of things that were useful to them. However, someone quickly found the key to open the door to a new world on the first floor. The Pirate King? Why are there drawings inside? This person's drawings are also quite strange. Half an hour later, this thing is quite interesting. A day later, a short new student came to Ren Baqien and said, "Teacher, I want to drop out of school." What happened? Ren Baqien was a little surprised. Tell me about it. I'm your principal after all, and maybe I can help you solve it. In other words, there weren't many things that he couldn't solve in Daeyeou. Although this young man wasn't considered outstanding in all aspects, Ren Baqien really didn't want his students to leave for inexplicable reasons. I want to pursue my dreams. Ren Baqien had a strange look on his face. Why did the word dreams sound so strange coming from the mouth of an aboriginal? I want to go to the Yun Nation, I want to steal a ship, I want to go out to sea, and I want to be the Pirate King. The young man clenched his fists and shouted with a serious look on his face. Ren Baqien's eyes twitched as he looked at the other party's serious face. He silently took out the Type 81 rifle from under the table, pointed it at the young man, and said, "I'll give you another chance to organize your words." Sometimes, life was very interesting, especially when one looked back after a period of time. Many years later, when this young man became the commander of Daeyeo's navy, Rinpoche felt that today was particularly interesting. Sometimes, a person's future was decided by a small thought when they were young. At this time, Rinpoche still felt that this young man was interesting. However, when he saw another person the next day, he began to feel that in this era without any entertainment, comics were too impactful and had a greater impact on students than he had imagined. The next day, when Rinpoche came to class, he felt that something was wrong. After carefully looking for a long time, he finally found what was wrong: several shiny bald heads. Bald heads were common in Daeyeou. On one hand, the weather was hot, and on the other hand, many men shaved their heads to save trouble. However, there were many bald heads in the classroom today, and one of them surprised him. Underneath the bald head was a very beautiful face. "Zhuohua, what's with your hair?" Rinpoche asked as he placed his hands on the table. Aboriginal women either tied their hair in a bun or combed it into a small braid. Being bald was quite unusual. "I suddenly felt like shaving." Zhuohua blushed and looked away. "What exactly is the reason?" Rinpoche had a bad premonition, and his face darkened. "It is said that you can become stronger this way." Someone beside him whispered. Many people snickered. Rinpoche was speechless. "Sit down. Do you think the stories in those picture books are true?" Rinpoche didn't reprimand these students and asked seriously. "I believe it. That kind of thing is happening in a corner of the world. Otherwise, where did those picture books come from?" Someone immediately stood up and said with a serious expression, "It was the teenager who wanted to go out to sea to become a pirate king yesterday. I think maybe it's true? What if it's true?" Someone else said. "Regardless of whether it's true or not, it's pretty interesting. I hope it's true." Rinpoche looked at the answers of these students and pondered. Those comics had a greater impact than he thought. These students hadn't been exposed to many things and hadn't been exposed to any entertainment. Comics had never appeared in this world before. He originally wanted to show these comics to entertain the students and expand their imaginations. He didn't expect so many students to be influenced and even believe it was real. People on Earth could be exposed to all kinds of information from a young age and could easily distinguish between stories and reality. However, children on Earth would also have thoughts of becoming Ultraman, Super Saiyan, Sun Wukong, Calabash Brothers. Rinpoche recalled that when he was young, he always wanted to be the sixth child. These students had just come into contact with such new things, so it wasn't incomprehensible for them to have such a situation. It seemed like he still had to let them come into contact with more things in order to have the ability to distinguish between things. Perhaps he should make a newspaper or something, such as the Lon City Daily. On one hand, it would allow these students to train, and on the other hand, it would provide some entertainment for the people of Lon City. At the same time, he could control a mouthpiece. Chapter 661. Shanghai, Ting, and Renren Martial Arts Dojo. A pair of students were sparring on the arena in the dojo. There were more than 10 people watching, and 7 or 8 people were hitting sandbags a little further away. "Coach, I heard that a new dojo opened nearby." "It's opening today," said a bare-chested young man in shorts. The other person was a well-built man in his 30s. He sat on a chair and glanced at the 2 people in the arena from time to time. "Oh." The well-built man nodded nonchalantly. "They teach them and we teach us." There were at least 80 if not 100 famous dojos in Shanghai. There were even more if you included karate, taekwondo, and the like. This did not include the small dojos that opened one day and closed the next. There were quite a few families in the vicinity that could be called out by their names, and all of them minded their own business. Things were different now. There were not as many challengers when a new dojo opened. After all, smashing someone's signboard was equivalent to cutting off their source of income. It was a deadly feud. No one would do such a thing if there was no grudge between them. At most, they would occasionally interact with each other when their skills were similar. But that was mostly what students did. But this dojo is quite strange. Usually, there would be some advertising before opening, but this dojo didn't do anything. It's 3 floors and the rent is 2 to 3 million a year. I don't know how they earn that much, the young man said casually. That's their business. You're telling me this for a reason, aren't you? The well-built man turned to look at him. There was a glint in his eyes, which made the young man's heart pound. Coach, I think Shui and the others went to look for trouble, the young man said softly. The well-built man frowned. Shui and the others were in a small circle of 5. They were all between the ages of 17 and 20, and they all came from good families. Among them, Shui had been training here the longest. He had trained here for 5 years and liked to fight. He had even sparred with a few taekwondo and karate instructors. However, the ones he sparred with were all from big dojos. They had come back to teach children and were not very skilled. Now that he had grown bolder, he actually went to challenge others. Did he think he was good enough after winning a few times? Those small taekwondo dojos that were only a few dozen square meters couldn't compare with those small taekwondo dojos that could rent a few million yuan a year. He would not be a match for any 1 or 2 coaches. Coach, do you want to take a look? In any case, he's from our dojo. I'm afraid he'll lose face, the young man said. What's there to see? If he loses, it's because he's not skilled enough, and if he loses face, he's the one who loses face. The robust man said. He didn't think that a student who had only trained for a few years could compete with an instructor from a big martial arts school, even if the student was talented. They weren't on the same level at all. 2 streets away from Renren Martial Arts School, there was an ancient martial arts school with a wooden exterior wall. At the bottom of the sign was a small Wu character. There was also an unrecognizable character above it. It looked like Xiaozhuan. Some busybodies nearby studied it for a long time, but they could not figure out what it was. Later, when they saw the people from the martial arts club, someone asked if it was the word Yao. However, no one knew which dynasty the word came from. Many people thought it was a self-made word, and they even laughed at it. At that moment, a few robust young men walked into the martial arts club, laughing. What was surprising was that in addition to the luxuriously decorated hall, reception, and a few rooms on the first floor, there was also a restaurant. Is this a martial arts club or a restaurant? A short-haired young man asked with a grin. Of course it's a martial arts club. That's where the internal students eat. The receptionists were 2 girls in their 20s. They looked delicate and pretty, and they answered politely. What do you teach? The young man asked with a smile. Currently, there's only one fist technique, the fist of death, the girl replied. Fist of death? That's a scary name. It won't kill people, right? The young man next to her suddenly laughed. But I've never heard of it. Can you show it to us? Do you want to sign up? The girl asked. Let's see what we're capable of before deciding whether to sign up or not. Girl, call your coach out to talk to me. If he wins, I'll sign up. What do you think? Another bronze-skinned, burly, and fierce-looking young man said in a deep voice. Ren Baqian was sitting on the 3rd floor, listening to Ren Wanyan and Ding Jie's reports. He was a little surprised to suddenly hear someone reporting to him. Someone is here to cause trouble? Ren Baqian, Ren Wanyan, and Ding Jie were all surprised, and their expressions became strange. To challenge here? How stupid must they be? Yes, the other party said it's an exchange, but it should be a challenge, the receptionist who came to report said. She was a little nervous facing this big boss whom she met for the first time. The main thing was that this big boss didn't look like a good person. He gave her the same feeling as the 2 great coaches in the martial arts club, and he had an intimidating aura. Is there such a thing nowadays? Ren Baqian asked, finding it a little funny. I've asked around, and it's very rare now. Moreover, we just opened for business and haven't done any advertising. It's impossible to affect others or attract hostility, Ding Jie said. After more than half a year of busy work, Ding Jie had matured a lot. In addition, he had been practicing martial arts these days, and his body had become stronger. He looked like a promising young man in his 20s, no longer a bean sprout like he used to be. This change was tangible. He knew that he wasn't outstanding in any way, and there were a lot of people who were stronger than him. Although he didn't know why the boss liked him and gave him such an opportunity, he had to redouble his efforts. Therefore, Ding Jie strived to do everything to the best of his ability. Bring them to the second floor and call the few coaches along the way. Rinpoche smiled, stood up and walked out of the door. Since he had nothing to do, it wasn't bad to watch some fun. After a while, Rinpoche and the others saw 5 young men being brought up. They were all 17 or 18 years old, the age where they would stir up trouble. Seeing these people, Rinpoche immediately lost most of his interest. As soon as the 5 youths came up, they saw 7 or 8 people standing there, especially 2 of them who looked like human bears. They were immediately shocked. If such people stood there and let them hit them, they might not even be able to move them. However, since they were already here, they couldn't just admit defeat. At 17 or 18 years old, their reputation was more important than the sky. In order to fight for their reputation, they would stab their brothers from time to time. Moreover, a few of their good friends were watching. One of the young men stepped forward and shouted, "Which one of you is the coach? I'm from Renren Martial Arts School. Let's have an exchange." "Boss, let me do it," Lu Chenggu, the second oldest of the Lu brothers, said. Their annual salaries weren't low, but they had nothing to do as consultants. They had always wanted to show their value. Seeing this situation, they immediately volunteered. Rinpoche nodded. "Are you here for an exchange?" Lu Chenggu stepped forward and asked. The other party was relieved to see Lu Chenggu come out. As long as it wasn't those 2 guys, it was fine. Since the guy who came out looked like he was in his 40s, their chances of winning had greatly increased. "That's right, we are from Renren Martial Arts School," a few of them immediately said. Lu Chenggu nodded and silently walked to a row of sandbags at the side. He casually punched one in the middle, pointed, and said, "The sandbags here are from light to heavy. Which level can you move?" "Punching sandbags?" Those people immediately laughed and looked down on them. The people from this martial arts school were somewhat cowardly. The young man in the lead walked to the side of the heaviest sandbag, took a deep breath, lifted his leg, and kicked it. Boo! Crack! The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. That young man hugged his leg and lay on the ground, wailing in pain. The other people's faces immediately changed. They didn't expect such a situation to happen. "What's in that sandbag?" Rinpoche turned his head and asked. "Steel ingot." Lu Chengwen replied from behind. Rinpoche almost burst out laughing. He really didn't expect that the Lu brothers were so black-bellied. They provoked a hot-blooded young man to use all his strength to kick a steel ingot. This kick would make him doubt his life. What a talent! Rinpoche liked this kind of talent. Chapter 662. It had to be said that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Nowadays, those who could make a name for themselves in the martial arts circle weren't simple. The Lu brothers seemed to be very quiet, but they easily made Rinpoche realize what it meant to be awesome. He reckoned that they would have a psychological scar from hitting sandbags for the rest of their lives. Rinpoche was in a good mood and had a higher opinion of them. Their goal had been achieved. To be honest, they knew that no matter how good they were at fighting, their boss wouldn't think highly of them. There were too many people who could fight. The dozens of people in the villa could poke them to death with one finger and slap them to the wall. This kind of experience was what Rinpoche valued the most. Rinpoche's reaction also proved this point. Both sides had forgotten one thing. Rinpoche's original purpose of hiring them was to teach the winged cavalry warriors martial ethics. It was to teach martial ethics. The other party rushed forward and surrounded their companion. After figuring out the whole story, they immediately jumped up and scolded. "Bastards, don't you have any shame? Do you think you are fit to open a martial arts center? F***XXXXX. Rinpoche tilted his head, and one of the winged cavalry warriors suddenly became smart. He understood what Rinpoche meant and strode over. Every step he took seemed to shake the ground. His huge body gave those people a huge deterrent. They paused for a moment before clamoring again, "You don't dare to fight and play dirty. What do you want now?" They didn't believe that these people could do anything to them now. If they wanted to do anything, they could just call the police and make them suffer. That winged cavalry warrior walked over to them with a contemptuous look on his face, turned around without saying a word, and swept his leg across. Before they could react, that leg swept across the sandbag, following which, a gust of wind blew across their faces. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The sandbag that had just made the young man's face bloody exploded, and the steel ingots inside shot out like fragments of a cannonball. The visual impact made everyone feel the huge force. Clang, clang, clang. After a series of sounds, the winged cavalry warriors came back to their senses and stared at the scene on the wall. Their faces turned green. The walls were densely embedded with steel ingots that were 3 fingers wide and 2 fingers thick. All of the steel ingots were embedded perfectly straight into the wall, and not the slightest bit was exposed outside. That kick just now didn't seem like a human's kick at all, but a Gundam's kick. Otherwise, how could it have caused such an impact? Everyone's eyes widened and their mouths opened and closed. They were like fish out of water, unable to utter a single word. Bean-sized sweat trickled down their foreheads, and their faces were deathly pale. They looked at the winged cavalry warrior and then at the wall. They uniformly took a step back, carried the young man on the ground, and ran away without saying a word. He didn't dare to say a word. If this kick landed on him, it would be no better than being hit by a truck at 100 miles per hour. The only difference was whether the corpse was whole or not. Not only were they frightened, but even Ren Wanyan and the Liu brothers were horrified. After those youths ran away, the 3 of them looked at the 2 winged cavalry warriors with admiration. "Boss, do we need to do some publicity or something?" Ding Jie asked. With the strength of these mountain kids, it would immediately cause a sensation as long as they did some publicity, such as taking a video of that kick and posting it on the internet. In his mind, this cultural martial arts company could be established all over the country, gain a great reputation, and become a martial arts holy land in the hearts of ordinary people, just like Shaolin. The difference was that other martial arts centers needed a huge amount of energy and money to do so, and people might not necessarily buy it. Here, all they needed was a gentle push from the back. Upon hearing this question, the others pricked up their ears. "There's no hurry. It's not the right time yet. Let's recruit students first. Those who are fated will come." Rinpoche shook his head. With the strength of the winged cavalry, as long as someone witnessed it, there would naturally be people coming. They were too strong, and even without any publicity, Rinpoche was confident that there would be no shortage of disciples. Just like today's incident, it would definitely be spread out in the future. If they were defeated in an ordinary match, there wouldn't be much to say, and it was even possible for the opponent to slander them after they left. However, that kick from the winged cavalry was far beyond that of a human. Ordinary people who saw this scene were more likely to exaggerate it, and this would make the martial arts center famous. If they were to do more publicity, the martial arts center would probably be overcrowded. The martial arts center had just been established, and the various systems weren't perfect yet. They didn't have enough experience and weren't ready for this. Let's do it bit by bit. After all, Rinpoche's martial arts center was completely different from the martial arts centers, taekwondo centers, and karate centers that previously existed. There were too many things involved, and many things had to be carefully considered. Ding Jie and Ren Wanyan were somewhat puzzled and felt that it was a pity. Other martial arts centers were eager to become famous, but Rinpoche seemed to be afraid of others finding out. However, they would listen to whatever Rinpoche said. In the future, the disciples will be divided into 3 categories. The first category will be ordinary outer disciples, the second category will be inner disciples with some potential, and the last category will be core disciples, Rinpoche said. "What's the difference in treatment?" Ding Jie asked. Ordinary disciples will be taught according to the previous rules. The annual tuition fee will be 50,000 yuan, and they will only be taught boxing techniques to hone their bodies. As for inner disciples, the annual tuition fee will be 20,000 yuan, and they will be taught basic martial arts techniques. As for core disciples, there will be no tuition fee, but they will have to complete missions and exchange points for martial arts techniques, Rinpoche explained briefly. Ding Jie and Ren Wanyan felt that it was a little strange. They didn't know why Rinpoche had set up such a system. Core disciples actually didn't need to pay tuition fees, but had to complete missions? What missions? Meanwhile, the Liu brothers focused their attention on the martial arts techniques that Rinpoche mentioned. Let's leave it at that for now. There are some things that you will understand in the future. Rinpoche waved his hand. After that, Rinpoche left and went to another martial arts center in Pudong, which was also overseen by 2 winged cavalry warriors. Different from the previous one, there were actually a few students registered for this martial arts center. Rinpoche didn't even need to think to know that it must have something to do with some departments. However, it didn't matter as the sand couldn't be washed clean. This time, Rinpoche opened a total of 2 martial arts centers in Shanghai. They were located in Jing'an and Pudong, with an area of about 1,000 square meters and an excellent location. In addition to the teaching area, each martial arts center also had a herb room and a dining room. Naturally, the herbs and meat that were brought back from Dayo were helpful for cultivation. Of course, they weren't open to external disciples. However, these 2 points alone made it incomparable to any other place. These things couldn't be bought by others even if they had the money, and Rinpoche wasn't prepared to sell them. Originally, Rinpoche was going to build a martial arts center in the capital and a martial arts center in Yang City. However, after careful consideration, he didn't dare to let the winged cavalry warriors out as they might cause trouble. After settling the matters of the martial arts centers, Rinpoche became a hands-off shopkeeper and left the 2 martial arts centers to Dingjie and Renwanyen to slowly develop. In any case, his request was to let nature take its course. No publicity, no activities, and it didn't matter if they came or not. He returned to Dayo to start building the paper mill. Furthermore, the roadbed and sleepers of the circular railway had already been laid, and Rinpoche still had to arrange for the laying of the tracks. 260,000 kilograms of steel was equivalent to the steel output of Dayo for the past 3 years. This was the largest expenditure since the founding of the nation. He had to let those people in the imperial court see the results as soon as possible. Chapter 663. Selling newspapers. Lan City Daily, 1 copper coin for a fresh copy of Lan City Daily. Early in the morning, the streets and alleys of Lan City were filled with such voices. Groups of children in animal skin skirts ran around the streets with thick stacks of newspapers, shouting nonstop. Lan City Daily? What's that? The passers-by were puzzled. What was this? Black Bamboo Academy's new daily. It has the latest information on all the big and small things happening in Lan City. The Minister of Revenue and the Minister of War fought in the imperial court. The Minister of Rights returned home drunk from a brothel last night and was kicked into the gutter by his wife. The Minister of War challenged an unknown expert last night and was kicked in the balls. Protector Zi Donglai won consecutive battles in the Yun Nation and conquered 7 cities. Kid, come here. Is what you just said true? A burly man asked. Of course, it's all in the newspaper. The person who was called was a 7 or 8-year-old child. He looked up at the burly man expectantly and asked, "Do you want one?" 1 copper coin. I don't know how to read. The burly man laughed heartily. The child's face darkened. Why are you asking if you don't know how to read? I'm asking if it's true. The burly man didn't mind. At this moment, another little girl ran past and shouted, "Selling newspapers. There's a half-length portrait of Her Majesty in the newspaper. There's also all kinds of news in Lan City. Give me one." The burly man threw a copper coin at her without hesitation and walked away happily with a newspaper. Although he couldn't understand what was written on it, it was good to see the Empress's half-length portrait. The first page of this so-called Lan City Daily was a half-length portrait of the Empress. Although it was black and white, everyone could imagine that she was wearing a bright red dress. Her eyes were slightly narrowed, and it seemed as if a cold glint flashed across them. Those who bought this newspaper could even feel the aura of the Empress through this portrait. They didn't know who the person in the portrait was, but it was like a real person. This was the so-called lifelike. When they got back, they would place the paper on the table and offer flowers and tributes in the morning and evening. More than one person thought so. Some people even made a wooden frame and placed the newspaper in it. It was easier to place it this way. Sir C., The newspapers are selling well, but most of them are buying for His Majesty's bust. Not many people are literate. I'm afraid we won't be able to sell so much after tomorrow. In the afternoon, more than half of the newspapers had been sold out. Zhu Zhuo, the director of the Department of Commerce, reported to Ren Baqian. It doesn't matter. If you can't sell them, send them to various places and paste them on the streets and find someone to read them, Ren Baqian said. The newspaper could, on the one hand, enlighten the people, and on the other hand, it could be used as a source of persuasion. It didn't matter even if they lost money. Moreover, this thing could not be used for compensation. However, Ren Baqian had the foresight to publish the Empress's half-body photo in the newspaper. At the very least, the reputation of Lan City Daily had spread. After the Martial Arts Center opened for business, another month had passed in Dayo. During this period of time, Ren Baqian had built a paper mill that mainly produced two types of paper. One was to make newspapers, and the other was to make toilet paper. After that, he left paper mill to the Ministry of Works. If it wasn't a very valuable item or a luxury item that could only be used for a short period of time, such as mirrors and glass, he didn't intend to get involved at all. This was to prevent him from getting a reputation of competing with the people for profits. It didn't matter to him, but he still had to consider the Empress. This also gave the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Revenue some benefits. As for the content of the newspaper, it was basically provided by the students of the academy. The students were very interested in these new things during their spare time and brought out a lot of the secrets of the various residences. For example, Tong Lan didn't hesitate to reveal the dark history of her grandfather, Tong Jinya. It was enough to write a special column for several issues of the Tong residence. Ren Baqian left the office of the Ministry of Commerce and went to the area between Beihong District and Julian District. There, a small area of houses had been cleared and a circular plaza had been emptied. In the middle of the plaza were piles of cement, red bricks, and thick tree trunks. There were also many aboriginals coming and going. The clock tower was currently being built here. Currently, more than half of the 60 meters tall clock tower had been built. It was estimated that it would be completed in another month. The Zhang family was also busy building the huge tower clock on top of the clock tower. If everything went smoothly, the clock tower would be completed within 2 months. It could also be said to be a landmark of Lan City. After looking around the clock tower for a long time, Ren Baqian returned to the palace and saw the Empress standing in front of a table. The table was covered with brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. The Empress stood there for a long time with a brush in her hand before moving it swiftly. Ren Baqian walked over and saw the Empress drawing something. He immediately laughed and said, "Your Majesty is actually drawing. Why are you in such a good mood today?" I have to calm down. It is said that drawing has this effect." The Empress quickly finished drawing and threw the brush aside. She stretched her body and waist, exposing the beautiful curves of her upper body to Ren Baqian's eyes. The Empress felt that her cultivation level was still increasing recently, which made her somewhat vexed. She almost didn't need to cultivate. It seemed that her cultivation level was increasing casually, regardless of whether she was happy or angry. Occasionally, she would have an epiphany, and her cultivation level would increase substantially. If she hadn't forcefully restrained herself previously, she would have broken through to the cardinal heaven level and reached the level of the late emperor. However, despite restraining herself, her strength was still gradually increasing, which made her somewhat vexed. Recently, she had been worrying about her rapid growth. If others knew about her troubles, they would probably vomit 3 liters of blood and hang themselves. How many people were stuck at a bottleneck and couldn't advance an inch? How many people worked day and night in order to advance further? On the other hand, the Empress was vexed that she couldn't control the speed of her growth. "Your Majesty, is this drawing comical?" Ren Baqian looked at the thing on the paper and was immediately shocked. It was a round ball with 2 crescent eyes and an arc at the bottom. If this wasn't comical, what was? "What's comical?" The Empress was a little puzzled. She then pointed at the balls on the paper and said, "The sun, the red moon, and the yellow moon. Don't they look like them?" Ren Baqian was silent for a long time. "Well, There are indeed two moons in this world, one red and one yellow. The red moon can be seen every day, while the yellow moon can only be seen once every 3 days. However, no matter how I look at it, your drawing is comical. The standard is equivalent to a kindergarten. However, you are the Empress and you have the final say. It looks like it, but I was too stupid and didn't think of it for a while. After hearing what your Majesty said, it was indeed like this. If it was colored, I would have been able to recognize it at a glance. Your Majesty is able to draw such a picture with just one hand. Ordinary people can't compare to you. Do you think I'm a fool? You are fooling me again. The Empress glanced at him, flicked her sleeves, and walked back to the couch. How can that be? It's impossible to draw such a round sun without practicing for 8 to 10 years. In the past, there was a great painter who drew eggs for several years but couldn't draw 2 identical ones. Later on, he became one of the most famous painters. Look at your Majesty's drawing, it's almost the same as a compass. If your Majesty were to draw another one, I'm sure you would be able to reach this level. Look at these 2 moons, even the angle and size are exactly the same. This level of control is beyond the reach of others, and it's natural to get twice the result with half the effort. Ren Baqin exclaimed seriously. Your Majesty, regardless of whether it's martial arts or painting, you are much better than ordinary people. Does the great painter you mentioned really exist? What's his name? The Empress turned her head and asked. Chapter 664. I've taken a look at your things. Why are they all messed up? The Empress picked up a newspaper from the couch, folded it twice, and made a paper airplane. She had learned this from Ren Baqin. Following which, the Empress raised her hand. The plane first flew up high and then dipped down diagonally. Ren Baqin reached out and plucked it. He placed it in front of his nose and sniffed it. Besides the scent of ink, there was also the Empress's fragrance. After all, this is Lan City Daily, and it's published by the students of the school. It's not Dayo Daily, and it's better to write some gossip to arouse the interest of the commoners. It's a pity that there are too few literate people. I plan to post the daily on the streets and find a few people to read it. This way, even if the commoners are illiterate, they will know what's written on it. Ren Baqin walked to the side of the couch and put the newspaper down. Then, he picked up a fruit and a small knife from the small table. He quickly rotated them a few times, and the skin of the fruit fell off. Ren Baqin looked at it from every angle and nodded his head in satisfaction. The peeling was just right, not 1 inch more or 1 inch less. If it was 1 inch more, it would be too thick, and if it was 1 inch less, it would be too thin. It was just enough to peel off the entire peel. His knife technique had improved again. In the future, he could get a title like the First Blade of Wind and Cloud, which sounded better than the Stinky Emperor. Your Majesty! Ren Baqin handed the fruit to the Empress, and she praised, your control of strength is much better than before. Not at all, I'm still far behind you. Your ability to control your body when drawing a circle is beyond my reach. Although it looks like you're just drawing a circle, you can see the whole picture just by looking at a corner. Ren Baqin was overjoyed and quickly said, flattery in business required reciprocity. Otherwise, who would play with you? Then, he waited expectantly for the Empress to continue praising him. It's really not bad. When I was 5 years old, I probably did this. The Empress held the fruit in her hand and spun it in front of her eyes. Ren Baqin. The Empress squinted at Ren Baqin's depressed expression. Her eyes curved into crescents, and her gaze was full of smiles. She used her finger to touch the fruit, and it immediately broke into 8 small pieces. With a flick of her finger, one of the pieces flew into Ren Baqin's mouth. Take a seat, the Empress said casually. Ren Baqin pulled a chair over and sat beside the couch. He pulled the Empress's hand over and placed it against his own palm. The warmth of their palms was transmitted to each other. Even though it wasn't his first time holding the Empress's hand, he always felt that the Empress's hand was very delicate and soft. It was as if she could touch his heart. He could even feel the Empress's strong heartbeat through his palm. I can feel your Majesty's heartbeat, and your Majesty can also feel my heartbeat. This is called mutual affinity. Renbachin laughed. After that, both of them calmed down and felt each other's heartbeat. Both of their heartbeats sped up a little, and the surrounding temperature also rose a little. I would like to try the taste of your Majesty's lip balm. Renbachin leaned forward and put his face close to the Empress's. The next second, a tubular object was stuffed into Renbachin's mouth. The Empress's eyes curved into crescent moons. My lip balm is in your mouth. You can eat it all. Renbachin's eyes widened. He took out the lip balm from his mouth and finished it in one mouthful, 2 mouthfuls. It tastes very good, Renbachin exclaimed. After tasting it, 1 isn't enough. Then, another tube of lip balm was stuffed into his mouth. The Empress stretched out her hand, and 10 tubes of lip balm appeared between her fingers. You bought 50 tubes for me last time. Forget it, I'm almost full. Renbachin sat back down resentfully. The Empress looked at Renbachin, and there seemed to be something in her eyes. Then, she quickly extended her head and lightly touched his lips. The soft and gentle touch only lasted for a moment before parting ways. The lip balm on your Majesty's lips is much sweeter than this. Renbachin held the empty tube in his hand. Why didn't I know? The Empress looked at him with a smile. I'm known as an honest and adorable husband, and I've never spoken a single lie in my life. Now, my lips are also stained with lip balm. Your Majesty, you can try it and see if it's... Renbachin moved closer to the Empress, lowered his head, and kissed her gently. Their lips and teeth were connected, and the hot air between their noses brushed against each other's face. A few seconds later, Renbachin quickly licked her lips, retracted his head as fast as he could, and laughed. It's really sweet. The Empress snorted and blushed, but she wasn't annoyed at all. She pretended as if nothing had happened and changed the topic. The candy on the tree has been eaten up. Renbachin turned to look at the tree. Not only was the candy gone, but even the branches were gone. Only a bare trunk was left standing there. Lawn City Daily, the freshly minted Lawn City Daily. A shocking secret is about to be revealed. The grudge between the Minister of Works and the Minister of War. Lawn City Daily, why are the Minister of Works and the Minister of War at loggerheads? This issue of Lawn City Daily will officially reveal the secret. Hearing the sound of a newspaper seller coming from outside the wall, Zhang Junjing sent someone to buy a few copies. Newspapers weren't new to Zhang Junjing since they existed in the Yun Nation. However, the Yun Nation's newspapers were mainly printed by the imperial court and distributed to the warlords' residences in various cities. They were mostly about the transfer of officials and some major events in the Yun Nation. Ordinary people couldn't see them at all. This Lawn City Daily was completely different. It was mainly targeted at the common people. In addition to some major events, it also had a lot of gossip about the officials in the imperial court. Zhang Junjing felt that the Lawn City Daily that had just appeared actually had both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that it made the common people feel more familiar with the officials in the imperial court and felt that the officials were actually doing such things. At the same time, it allowed many officials who weren't well understood to enter the eyes of the common people. The disadvantage was that the officials in the imperial court lacked a lot of prestige. Renbachin didn't know what the Black Bamboo Academy's chief was up to by creating this thing. A moment later, Zhang Junjing took the Lawn City Daily and carefully studied it. The first page was the battle report of the Yun Nation. This issue of Lawn City Daily was published 3 days after the previous issue. During these 3 days, the Yun Nation had lost another 4 cities. Zhang Junjing estimated that this was actually news from 3 to 6 days ago. This was because it would take at least 3 days to travel from the Yun Nation to Lawn City even with the help of a yawning bird. However, when he heard that the Yun Nation had lost cities one after another as if they didn't have the strength to retaliate, he felt a sense of satisfaction. He had also pondered about it recently. This time, Daeyo's goal didn't seem to be to plunder and leave as everyone thought. If they were to plunder and leave, Daeyo's goal should have already been achieved by now. They had captured a quarter of the Yun Nation's cities, which was enough for them to plunder. There was also no need to send spies into the various cities to spy on the news. Zhang Junjing had a feeling that Dayo's goal this time was to occupy the entire Yun nation. Would the Yun nation be destroyed this time? Although the Zhang family was almost driven out, Zhang Junjing still felt a little sad when he thought about the fall of his homeland. Furthermore, did Dayo have those officials to send to the Yun nation? If it wasn't handled properly, he was afraid that the Yun nation would become a quagmire that would continuously swallow Dayo's energy and military strength. Zhang Junjing was slightly lost in thought. After a while, he flipped to the next page. The largest page at the back was about the grudges between Tong Xinye, the Minister of Works, and Qin Chuan, the Minister of War. After reading it, Zhang Junjing almost vomited blood. Not only him, but everyone else also felt like vomiting blood after reading the newspaper. Everyone knew that Tong Xinye and Qin Chuan were like fire and water. Fights in brothels were common occurrences, and there were also many fights in the imperial court. Even if they were beaten up by the empress in the end, they would rather be beaten up than let the other party go. They would rather perish together with the other party. Chapter 665. After reading the newspaper, Tong Xinye burst into laughter. The news in the newspaper could be said to be the proudest thing in his life, second to none. He didn't expect someone to remember it and even publish it in the newspaper. How nostalgic! He remembered that it was the spring of the 36th year of the Dayo calendar. A year ago, the first emperor of Dayo entered the depths of the 60,000 mountains with the brave warriors and many experts from the court. There was no news of them after that. The new emperor had just ascended the throne, and Great Xia was eyeing the north of Dayo covetously. During this period, almost all of the weapons that Dayo obtained after conquering the Han nation were taken away by the former emperor. The important ministers and veterans had all disappeared and were replaced by some young officials who had just been promoted. They were poor in other aspects, and it could be said that this was the most dangerous time for Dayo. Tens of thousands of strong young men came out of the 60,000 mountains to join the army or the court. Tong Xinye was one of them. Relying on his strength as a Kismet heaven expert, he often fought with others and made some enemies. However, he also made some good friends. One of them was Qin Chuan. The two of them got to know each other through fighting. Later on, they went to Lan City together. Coincidentally, the recruitment quota was full, and the group of 7 or 8 people were poor. They lived in abandoned houses in the city and didn't even have food to eat. A few of them decided to dine and dash. At most, they would be beaten up. In the end, the others didn't put down their pride and went all the way to the Yun nation to plunder a lot of fruits. Now, they were all serving in the Protectorate of the Northeast, and one of them was the Protectorate of the Northeast's Deputy Protector General, Ji Sheng. Only Tong Xinye and Qin Chuan went to dine and dash. The expected beating didn't come. You look like you're here to join the army, right? The recruitment quota was full a few days ago. If you don't have a place to go, come here for dinner, but I can't provide for you too. The person who said this was a girl who was 17 or 18 years old. Her skin was a little rough, but she looked very energetic and had a cheerful smile. Tong Xinye asked subconsciously. One had to know that such a small shop could only sustain itself and wouldn't make much money. You're here to join the army and protect Dayo. Although you didn't succeed, it's just a few meals, and it's not a big deal. Speaking of which, you two can't possibly eat like this for the rest of your lives, right? The girl laughed heartily. At that moment, the girl's smile between the sun and the shadows struck the hearts of the two young men. I want to take her as my wife, Qin Chuan said under the sunlight after walking out of the restaurant. Tong Xinye didn't say anything. He didn't know what he wanted to say. After that, the two of them mingled around Lan City for a few days and became familiar with that lady. They also learned that the lady's name was Tai Muxin. With their decent strength, the two of them were recognized and entered the Ministry of Works. With their identities, it was even easier for them to run to the store. In reality, both of them had a good impression of Tai Muxin. It was just that Qin Chuan was more proactive, and his actions were more obvious. Tai Muxin was gradually moved by him. Tong Xinye wanted to show off a few times, but he was always one step slower than Qin Chuan. As time went by, Qin Chuan and Tai Muxin began to flirt with each other. Because of this matter, Tang Jinye had been very vexed for a period of time. It was the vexation of a young man. Until one day Tang Jinye told him that there was a young expert in Qinchuan City who was stronger than Qin Chuan. Then, Qin Chuan went to challenge him and suffered a crushing defeat. After that, Tang Jinye gave Qin Chuan a martial arts manual that he had obtained by chance and said, "You are not strong enough. How are you going to marry the person you like? Can you protect her?" Even though Qin Chuan was already considered outstanding among the youths at that time, he, who had just suffered a crushing defeat, agreed with what Tang Jinye said. Then, he took the martial arts manual and plunged into the world of martial arts. After that, the number of times Qin Chuan went to see Tai Muxin gradually decreased. He was so engrossed in martial arts that he couldn't extricate himself. Tang Jinye, on the other hand, put in a lot of effort to find martial arts manuals for Qin Chuan. Every time Qin Chuan finished practicing a martial arts manual, Tang Jinye would give him another one. Over the course of 3.5 years, he had given Qin Chuan 7 different martial arts manuals and fist techniques. If that was all, the two of them were indeed good friends. Qin Chuan was extremely grateful for everything that Tang Jinye had done. 3.5 years later, when Qin Chuan, who felt that he had been reborn, came out of the world of martial arts. Tai Muxin and Tang Jinye were already engaged. At that time, Qin Chuan was in a bad mood. However, at that time, Qin Chuan still didn't suspect Tang Jinye. After all, his brain wasn't that good. Moreover, at that time, the two of them only had feelings for each other. In the end, he plunged into the world of martial arts for more than 3 years. During this period of time, everything changed. One day, not long after that, Qin Chuan was drinking in a restaurant. It just so happened that Tang Jinye and the young expert who defeated Qin Chuan were next door. That person was called Hong Wu. Even at that time, Qin Chuan still didn't suspect him. He was just happy with his good friend's success, so he wasn't in the mood to drink with Tang Jinye. That was until Tang Jinye and Hong Wu let it slip after drinking. Qin Chuan finally understood what was going on. From then on, Qin Chuan and Tang Jinye turned from good friends to enemies. It wasn't until Tai Muxin died a few years later due to excessive blood loss after giving birth that the two of them became mortal enemies. Qin Chuan never married, and neither did Tang Jinye. The two of them lingered in brothels and fought almost every time they saw each other until now. Sometimes, the two of them almost forgot why they fought. Tang Jinye recalled these old events, and a smile appeared on his weathered face. Although he tricked Qin Chuan, he didn't regret it at all. The proudest thing he did in his life was tricking Qin Chuan into marrying Tai Muxin. Every time he thought about it, he would happily drink a jar of wine. "Tang Jinye, you ignorant old man, come and fight me for 300 rounds." A loud shout came from outside the Ministry of Works. "Minister Qin is knocking on our door." He must have seen the newspaper. Everyone in the Ministry of Works whispered. Boss Tang was so sinister in the past. Wasn't Minister Qin too stupid? He was so obsessed with martial arts that he lost his wife. If Sir Qin hears this, he will fight you to the death. Ha, you actually dared to provoke the Ministry of Works and disrupt its order. Today, I must capture you and bring you to Her Majesty. Tang Jinye laughed out loud after hearing Qin Chuan's challenge. He carried a hammer that weighed more than 150 kilograms and went out. "I only found out about the matter between Qin Chuan and Tang Jinye today. I didn't expect it to be like this." The Empress put the newspaper aside and sighed. She didn't know why, but the content of the newspaper made her feel a little strange. It seemed to be sympathy for Qin Chuan. No wonder Sir Tang. Love is like a battlefield, and the first priority is to defeat the enemy. Sir Tang only used a small trick to make Sir Qin obsessed with martial arts. In the end, strength is still the most important thing in Sir Qin's eyes, Rinpoche said with a smile. He picked up a fruit and put it in the Empress's mouth. He casually scraped her lips, making her feel as if she had been electrocuted. "Your Majesty, Minister Qin and Minister Tang are fighting outside the Ministry of Works," Exenja came in to report. "This is the trouble caused by your newspaper." The Empress rolled her eyes at Rinpoche. "Forget it. On account of what happened to them, I will let it go this time and ignore them. It was rare for the Empress to be soft-hearted. Half of the Ministry of Works has been demolished, and the two of them are demolishing the Ministry of Rights. Next to the Ministry of Rights is the Ministry of Revenue. Xianzhe continued. The Empress's face immediately turned cold. She originally wanted to spare the two of them, but this time, she couldn't even spare them. Chapter 666. Let's find something to play? We can't possibly play with bees every day. Let's find something new. In a villa on Shi Mountain in Shanghai, 12 winged cavalry warriors sat in the living room looking bored. They practiced martial arts and drank every day here, and it was really boring after a long time. Tiny one, is there anything fun to play? Poker? Fight the landlord? Ding Jie shifted his gaze away from the tablet. I've played it before. It's not fun. The winged cavalry warrior shook his head. Fight the landlord? Mahjong? Ding Jie asked. It's too troublesome. My head feels like it's going to explode when I play, one of them said. Everyone nodded. What do you guys want to play then? Ding Jie asked helplessly. He had already figured out the nature of this group of people over the past 2 years. To put it nicely, they were straightforward, but to put it bluntly, they were stupid. I want to chop someone up. One of the winged cavalry warriors sighed. I want to do that too. My hands are itchy since I haven't chopped someone up in a long time. Another winged cavalry warrior was inspired by his words. Chopping the person and the knife in half with one slash would be a great life. Another winged cavalry warrior laughed heartily. Everyone began to reminisce about the days on the battlefield. Whether it was chopping someone up or being chopped up, it was always so refreshing. Even though they drank and ate meat every day, their days were extremely dull. Ding Jie's face turned green as he listened to the conversation. What exactly did these mountain kids experience in the past? He trembled with fear as he listened to everyone's discussion. He moved from the sofa to the ground, then to the back of the sofa. He then curled up, afraid that this group of bears would take out their knives and chop him up in the next second. While everyone was discussing, someone slapped his thigh and said, I just thought of something fun. What do we play? Everyone looked over. Don't we have so many guns? There's a game called Battle Royale in this world. Each of us will hold a gun, and we'll die if we get hit. Whoever doesn't get hit in the end wins. What do you think? That person suggested. Sounds good. One of them nodded. Everyone became excited after hearing this, and someone immediately went to bring back a box of guns and bullets. How do we use this? Someone reached out and picked Ding Jie up from behind the sofa. Ding Jie was shocked. What else do you guys want? Playing Battle Royale with real guns? Why aren't you guys flying? If he taught them, would the lady boss beat him to death when she came back? He would probably beat him to death. He absolutely could not teach them. I don't know either. You lied to me. More than a dozen man-bears moved their faces closer. How could you not know? Only people in the army can use this. How can a student like me know this? Ding Jie denied with a long face. You're really useless. Everyone had a look of contempt on their faces. Ding Jie had a bitter expression on his face, but he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. No matter what, it was fine as long as they were not allowed to play this game. I can use this. One of the winged cavalry warriors said as he picked up a flash bullet from a box. I know that too. Back then, we used this to break into the city, and it was indeed very useful. Everyone suddenly thought of the time when they attacked Tianjing Basin. Shall we play this? One of the winged cavalry warriors suggested. How do we play? The others asked. I remember that this thing takes a few breaths to explode. Let's sit around this hall and pass it around one by one. Whoever blows it up will be unlucky. The winged cavalry warrior said. Interesting. Let's do this. The others laughed heartily and immediately made the decision. Ding Jie, who was at the side, had just heaved a sigh of relief when his heart immediately jumped out of his throat. Not only did his face turn green, but it also turned dark green. Masters, can I call you masters? Can't you play something normal people play? This is a grenade. You can't play with it. Ding Jie immediately jumped up from the ground and roared with a distorted face. I know that this is a flash bullet, the winged cavalry warrior said in disdain. It seems like you really don't know these things. A flash bullet? Ding Jie looked at it carefully and found that it was indeed different from the grenades he had seen on television. If it was a flash bullet, wouldn't it be fine as long as he closed his eyes? Thinking about it this way, it seemed fine. The 12 winged cavalry warriors excitedly guessed for a long time before sitting in a circle in the hall according to the order. We will start when you give the order in a while. Oh. Ding Jie hesitated. If possible, he didn't even want them to play with this thing. It was a pity that he couldn't beat them and they could strangle 10 of him with one hand. Since this was the case, a flash bullet was better than a gun. In that case, he would agree to it. However, he didn't know that there was something similar to a flash bullet called a stun grenade. One of the winged cavalry warriors held a stun grenade in his hand. He first pulled out the ring and then tightly gripped the handle. You give the order to start. Ding Jie looked at the 12 pairs of eyes that were staring at him and said reluctantly, Start. Then he quickly closed his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, the first person immediately threw the stun grenade into the hands of the second person, who then threw it into the hands of the third person. The speed of the 12 people's hands was extremely fast, and the stun grenade seemed to have become an imaginary line in the room. Within 5 seconds, the stun grenade had been passed around the 12 people's hands. Bang! An intense flash suddenly resounded throughout the villa. In the instant that the stun grenade exploded, the 12 people closed their eyes one after another. However, it was already too late. It was as if countless flashes were flashing wildly in front of everyone's eyes, and they couldn't see anything other than a patch of white. Along with the intense flash was a huge sound wave that reached 170 decibels. In an instant, everyone felt as if they were being hit by something. It was as if their heads were being continuously smashed by stones, and they felt a strong sense of dizziness. Voila! All the glass items in the villa were shattered, including the TV that Rinpoche had just bought. It was also destroyed by the explosion of the stun grenade. As for Ding Jie, he felt as if his head had been hit by a sledgehammer when that huge sound wave hit him. He only managed to curse in his heart before fainting. Outside the villa, the members of the Messier 87 department who were monitoring the villa were shocked by the explosion of the intense flash and the huge sound wave. Other than that period of time when they weren't monitoring the villa at night in order to make the enemy agents let their guard down, there were people outside the villa 24 hours a day. What's going on? It looks like a stun grenade. Enemy attack? Monkey, contact the higher-ups and ask for reinforcements. Noodles, follow me to check out the situation. When they rushed into the villa, they saw the 12 stunned winged cavalry warriors with their eyes wide open. The physical fitness of the winged cavalry warriors was much better than that of ordinary people. Although the flash caused them to lose their vision for a while, they had already recovered by the time the Messier 87 department rushed in. However, the problem now was that everyone's ears were buzzing, and their heads were a little dizzy. What happened? Where are the enemies? The leader rushed in, took out his gun, and looked around. He realized that apart from these people, there was no sign of the enemy. What did you say? The dozen winged cavalry warriors came back to their senses and glared at him fiercely. Where are the enemies? The leader asked nervously. What did you say? The dozen winged cavalry warriors continued to look fierce. My ears are buzzing, and I can't hear anything, one of them said. What did you say? Another person asked. What are you talking about? A third person asked. The members of the Messier 87 department looked at the human bears with a look of despair. Apart from the beginning, no one paid any attention to them. All of them were asking each other questions, and the entire room was filled with the same phrase, what did you say? There was no enemy, and only a dozen of them were surrounded by the stun grenade. What exactly happened? Chapter 667. The wind is really noisy today. Rinpoche pushed open the window frame, and the cold wind whistled in. However, there was no physical change from warm to cold. This was because there was no difference whether the window frame was pushed open or not, and the glass had long been shattered into pieces. However, Rinpoche's current state of mind made him want to do this action. The Empress sat on the sofa with a sullen face. In front of her was a group of winged cavalry warriors with their heads lowered. These bears were as obedient as cats in front of the Empress, but from the situation in the house, it could be seen that when the Empress wasn't around, they were like happy huskies. In Dayo, Qin Chuan and Tong Jinye had demolished half of the Ministry of Works, half of the Ministry of Rights, and 1/3 of the Ministry of Revenue. As a result, when they came to Earth, they found out that this side had also been demolished. They really couldn't be peaceful anywhere. Apart from causing trouble for her and demolishing everywhere, could they do anything that made her happy? Bury them all, the Empress said coldly. Her aura was so strong that they didn't dare to move at all. Both the winged cavalry warriors and Ding Jie felt as if they were being pressed down by a mountain and couldn't even move a finger. The winged cavalry warriors knew what was happening, but Ding Jie was still confused and couldn't understand where this feeling of being pressed down by a mountain came from. The weather is really suitable for burying people. Rinpoche looked at the gloomy sky outside the window and sighed. There are shovels in the garage. Go get them yourself and dig 13 pits in the courtyard. 1 pit for each of you so that it won't be crowded down there. Rinpoche turned around and said, "Boss, I'm innocent. I can't stop them." Ding Jie's face turned green when he heard this. He wailed and almost cried. He wanted to stop them, but he couldn't. "Lady Boss, don't you know what kind of people those mountain kids are?" That day, he fainted, woke up, and got married again. If it wasn't for the people from the Messier 87 department who dragged him out and sent him to the hospital, he would probably be deaf by now. His ears weren't working well now. Those bastards used up 8 flash bombs in one night. Even the people from the Messier 87 department were shocked because several of them were sent to the hospital. Rinpoche pondered for a while. It was fine if those winged cavalry warriors were buried, but if Ding Jie was buried, it would really be over. Forget it, Ding Jie has nothing to do with this time, so I'll let him off. Aren't you going to dig a hole? Rinpoche turned around, leaned against the windowsill, and looked at the winged cavalry warriors who were as obedient as kittens. The Empress withdrew her aura, and the winged cavalry warriors felt as if they had been pardoned from a crime. They quickly went to the garage to get a shovel to dig a hole. "Boss, I really stopped them. They were going to play battle royale with their guns, but I stopped them and turned them into flash grenades. Who knew that the explosion of a flash grenade would be so powerful?" Ding Jie looked depressed. "Forget it." Rinpoche waved his hand. He knew that Ding Jie wouldn't be able to stop the winged cavalry. Rinpoche turned around and looked out of the window. More than 10 winged cavalry warriors came into the courtyard with a few shovels. In just a short while, they had dug 13 pits that were 1 meter wide and 2 meters deep. They even dug out yours. It seems like they approve of you. Rinpoche said to Ding Jie, "I don't need your approval at a time like this." Ding Jie's face turned green. "Why didn't you guys approve of me like this usually? Why did you guys think of me when you have to take the blame? Let them jump in and bury them. Leave their heads outside," Rinpoche said. Ding Jie looked bitter. How would he dare to do that? If he did that, wouldn't this group of people hammer him to death later? Moreover, wouldn't leaving his head outside really kill him? "Go." Rinpoche's voice was flat, but it sounded like a clap of thunder in Ding Jie's ears. No matter how casual Rinpoche usually was, he still had the aura of a high-ranking person. When he got serious, it made an ordinary person like Ding Jie feel fear, and he quickly ran out of the house. "What did the lady boss say?" the winged cavalry warriors asked when they saw him run out. Ding Jie didn't know what to say. He dug a hole for himself and wanted to bury them. How would this group of people look at him? "Say it," the winged cavalry warriors urged. "Everyone," the lady boss said, to bury all of you, and leave your heads outside. Ding Jie said bitterly to the winged cavalry warriors. He was already prepared to be resented by these people. "You still have your heads outside." To his surprise, this group of people wasn't dissatisfied at all. Instead, they happily found a hole to jump into. Ding Jie was tongue-tied as he looked at these people. His tongue almost jumped out of his throat. He had no idea what was going on in these people's minds. Sure enough, he was still too young. These people could use stun grenades to beat drums and pass flowers, which showed that their brains were different from ordinary people. Xiao Budian, that hole is left for you. Someone pointed at the empty hole and laughed out loud. I don't need it. Ding Jie didn't know what to say. The lady boss asked me to be responsible for burying them. Then you bury them. Wait, this hole is a little small. I'll change it. Mine isn't very comfortable either. Give me the shovel, I'll dig a few more times. Ding Jie was dumbfounded as he looked at this group of people changing holes and continuing to dig. They were burying people alive. Were they playing? Huh. Ding Jie didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw their reactions. He had indeed thought too much just now. All right, let's bury them. After a while, Ding Jie filled all 12 holes, revealing 12 heads that looked like carrots. There's a stone in my crotch. Wait a moment, I'll shake it off. Ding Jie had just finished burying the last one when the winged cavalry warrior said unhappily. He slammed his palms on the ground and rose into the air while Ding Jie's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Bastard, you messed with my face. The surrounding people immediately scolded. Wait, it will be done soon. That winged cavalry warrior reached into his crotch for a long time, took out a stone that was the size of half a fist, threw it aside, jumped into the hole, and said cheekily, bury them. Ding Jie continued burying people without saying a word. He really didn't have the energy to talk nonsense with this group of people. Sure enough, mountain kids could do whatever they wanted. He picked up the phone and heard Yang Sen's voice on the other end. You are finally back. Yes, I just came back, he replied faintly. I heard that you are digging holes to bury people? Yang Sen asked. No lives will be lost. Ren Baqin sighed. These people were very thick-skinned. That's good. You should take care of them. They are going to fly into the sky. Yang Sen didn't know whether to laugh or cry on the other end of the phone. He didn't know what to say when he thought about what those people had done in the villa. Using stun grenades to play the game of drumming and passing flowers? What were they thinking? The few subordinates that he had sent were immediately hit. They didn't even have time to run away. They were stunned by the loud sound of the stun grenade. Chapter 668. Brother, you are back? Are you going out for dinner tonight? Ren Wanyan was pleasantly surprised when he received the call. These days, his brother had been disappearing from time to time. He only showed up once every half a month, didn't answer the phone, and didn't care about the affairs of the martial arts center. Finally, he could catch someone again. He put down the phone and thought about it. His girlfriend seemed to have a big misunderstanding about his brother. But it couldn't always be like this. After all, on one side was his girlfriend, and on the other side was his brother. He had to think of a way to resolve this misunderstanding. Both of them were now in Shanghai, and they couldn't always be indifferent, right? Should he bring his girlfriend along tonight? Then, she would know what kind of person her brother was after interacting with him a few more times. At this thought, he called Zhou Qingyun. Qingyun, I'm going to my brother's place for dinner tonight. Come along. I'm not going. Zhou Qingyun refused without hesitation. It was enough for her to go there once. That place was simply a gathering place for thugs. Although she didn't know what kind of background they had, it wasn't good to be too close to these people in today's society. Qingyun, you really misunderstood before? Ren Wanyan explained to his girlfriend for a long time and finally managed to convince her. Okay. Zhou Qingyun's heart softened after being tortured by Ren Wanyan. Although she wouldn't change her mind, he was her boyfriend after all. She would go once. I'll tell my brother and accompany you to buy clothes later, Ren Wanyan said happily when he saw that his girlfriend had relented. No, I'm still working. I don't have as much freedom as you. I haven't even finished my internship. Come and pick me up tonight, Zhou Qingyun said. Is he your boyfriend again? A girl laughed behind Zhou Qingyun. Yes, I'm going to his brother's place for dinner tonight, Zhou Qingyun said casually. Your boyfriend's family is very rich. What does his brother do? Does he have a girlfriend? The girl immediately gossiped. He's all right. His brother. I don't know what he does. But he has a girlfriend, and she's even prettier than a celebrity. Zhou Qingyun thought of the woman in red she saw in the villa last time. Even though she was a girl, she was still stunning. Thinking about Ren Wanyan's brother, Zhou Qingyun suddenly shook her head. She's just teasing you too. These are beef ribs. She could still remember how Ren Wanyan, who weighed more than 100 kilograms and occasionally had a fierce look on his face, said those words calmly while holding the bone between his two fingers. After that, she searched the internet many times and confirmed that it was a human skull. There was no mistaking it. However, the other party seemed to be very powerful. It was obvious that someone had died in the villa, and the house was full of guns, but they didn't seem to care at all. However, Zhou Qingyun firmly believed that even if he really had the identity of a government official, his words and actions were definitely not a good person. It was better to have less contact with him. After hanging up the phone, Ren Wanyan happily paced around the room twice before calling Ren Baqian. Ren Baqian naturally had no problem with this. He didn't have much of an impression of his younger brother's girlfriend. He had only met her once and didn't pay much attention to her. Now, he had almost forgotten about her. He just knew that his brother had a girlfriend. If he wanted to bring her to dinner, he could bring her. Wanyan, come over for dinner tonight, Ren Baqian said to the Empress after hanging up the phone. Oh! The Empress lazily leaned on the sofa, threw the phone to Ren Baqian, and said, I want to watch the legend of Han Peopeo's journey to immortality. I have only watched 6 episodes, but I still like it very much. Nan Gongwan's character is too ugly. Without your Majesty's looks, who would dare to say that she is an outstanding beauty? Ren Baqian took the phone and laughed as he sat beside the Empress. Am I very beautiful? The Empress tilted her head and looked at Ren Baqian with flickering eyes. The most beautiful woman in the world. Ren Baqian said with certainty. Other than your Majesty, no one else is worthy of this title. Oomph! The Empress happily snorted twice through her nose. Cultivating to become an immortal is quite interesting. Are there really people who can cultivate in this world? The Empress asked curiously. Ren Baqian originally wanted to say that of course not, but he inexplicably thought of the monk in the north and changed his words. Maybe there are, but they are definitely not the same as those in the television series. The Empress got up and asked excitedly, Do you think these immortal cultivators can defeat me? With your Majesty's strength, even according to the fictional classification, you are at least equivalent to the Golden Elixir realm, right? One more step and you will be at the nascent soul realm. Even in the world of cultivation, you will be a hero. Ren Baqian said after thinking seriously. However, even if the world of cultivation really exists, it won't be like those in the television series. Otherwise, Earth would have long been gone. Therefore, Your Majesty is also a hero among the immortal cultivators and is revered by millions. I would really like to see it. The Empress leaned back on the sofa and said, she also yearned for the magnificent world of cultivation shown in the television series. After a while, Ren Baqian found The Legend of Han Peopeo's Journey to Immortality for the Empress and went to the second floor to get some ice cream and snacks. Your Majesty, open your mouth. Ren Baqian used 2 fingers to pick up the wooden handle of the ice cream and shook it above the Empress's forehead. Ah! Swallow. The Empress opened her mouth and swallowed the ice cream in Ren Baqian's hand. Then she spat out an ice cream stick. If you eat too quickly, it will chill your stomach. Ren Baqian smiled gently. I'm not afraid. The Empress's eyes didn't leave the phone. She suddenly sat up and grabbed Ren Baqian's collar. Watch it with me. But Ren Baqian replied with a smile. Well, the sofa could only accommodate 1 person. If 2 people were to lie on the sofa, even though it would be a little crowded, it was still a very beautiful thing. I will lie on the sofa. You can lie on the floor. This way you will be able to watch. The Empress directly dragged Ren Baqian to the floor. Then she lay on the sofa and held the phone in one hand. Ren Baqian leaned against the sofa with one hand behind his head. He looked at the phone for a while and then shifted his gaze to the side of the Empress's face. After an unknown period of time, Ren Baqian muttered, It won't be enough even if I look at it for a lifetime. What? The Empress tilted her head and looked at him from the corner of her eye. It won't be enough even if I look at it for a lifetime. Ren Baqin stretched out his finger and stroked the corner of the Empress's eye. Then, he drew an arc from the corner of her eye to her chin. His fingertips felt as if he was touching a piece of warm jade. If one day you don't want to look at it anymore, I will bury you under the palace. The Empress's voice was filled with indescribable emotions. I want to look at it for 10,000 years. Ren Baqin laughed. Well, I approve, the Empress said softly. My brother is a very good person. Don't let your imagination run wild. You see, my brother runs a proper martial arts center now. Haven't you been there before? Ren Wanyin and Zhou Qingyun were sitting in the car, and Ren Wanyin was still saying good things about his brother. Alright, I got it. You don't have to say any more. Zhou Qingyun covered her head. The martial arts center was a proper one, but the person wasn't a proper person. The two of them went all the way to Shishan. When they turned into the main gate, they saw more than a dozen round balls placed on the ground in the courtyard. What are these? Flower pots? Ren Wanyin laughed casually. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his eyes widened, and he stepped hard on the brake with a dumbfounded look on his face. There weren't flower pots on the ground, but more than a dozen human heads. Those human heads even turned around and glared at him. Be careful, kid. In the dark of the night, there were more than a dozen human heads on the ground in the courtyard. The human heads could even speak. That scene made Ren Wanyin's hair stand on end. A chill rushed from his tailbone to the back of his head. Chapter 669. Brother, save her. Ren Wanyin rushed in with Zhou Qingyun in his arms with a panicked look on his face. Ren Baqin and the Empress were sitting on the sofa playing Honor of Kings, shoulder to shoulder. The reappearance of the Black Wind double pits had set off a reign of terror in Honor of Kings. Wait, it's almost over, Ren Baqin said without looking up. My house is about to be torn down. I have to hurry up and use another big move. Alright, it's done. With a look of satisfaction on her face, the Empress shifted her gaze away from the screen of the mobile phone. She then pulled the cushion behind Ren Baqin and hugged it in her arms. Well, finally, it's been torn down again. Ren Baqin was also very satisfied. Their current record was 1 win and 67 losses. The only time they won was when all 5 of their opponents disconnected. Ren Wanyin stood there with Zhou Qingyun in his arms. Looking at the two people on the sofa, he began to suspect that coming tonight was a complete mistake. What's wrong? Ren Baqin put his phone aside, adjusted his sitting posture, and looked up. She seems to have fainted. Ren Wanyin looked down at Zhou Qingyun, but his face showed that he was very worried. Find a place to put her down. She'll be fine in a while. Why did she faint? Ren Baqin asked casually. Ren Wanyin looked at Ren Baqin with an embarrassed expression. You still have the cheek to ask? Who wouldn't be afraid of more than 10 human heads buried in the yard at night? His back was drenched in sweat at that moment. If he hadn't discovered that there were human heads buried there after getting out of the car, he would have fainted. Ren Wanyin carefully placed Zhou Qingyun on the sofa and heard Ren Baqin say, If you're worried, pour a bottle of water on her face and she'll wake up. Brother, you're really my brother. Are you afraid that I'm not capable enough to be single? Ren Wanyin looked resentful. She'll wake up in a while anyway, Ren Baqin said indifferently. While they were talking, Zhou Qingyun, who was placed on the sofa, groaned and slowly opened her eyes. Qingyun, are you okay? Ren Wanyin asked with concern. Zhou Qingyun looked at the person in front of her and the two people on the sofa. Her face began to turn pale, and she pushed Ren Wanyin away and ran out. Qingyun? Ren Wanyin was also shocked and chased after her. As a result, Zhou Qingyun screamed and ran back into the courtyard. She bumped into Ren Wanyin, hugged his waist, and trembled with tears. Boss, calm down, don't be afraid. It's not the head, it's the body that's buried there. Ren Wanyin patted her back and comforted her. However, it would have been better if he didn't explain. After hearing his words, Zhou Qingyun trembled from head to toe and almost fainted again. A living person was buried there. Ren Wanyin tried to salvage the situation. Zhou Qingyun was about to cry. A living person was buried there. Zhou Qingyun's tears fell. Ren Wanyan felt his lips tremble, and he wanted to slap himself twice. People are buried there. They are still alive, not dead. Ren Wanyan finally understood the situation. Alive. Zhou Qingyun raised her head and asked with tears in her eyes. Alive, not dead yet. Ren Wanyan said in a firm tone, trying to calm the person in front of him down. However, these words had a different meaning in Zhou Qingyun's ears. Not dead yet? Did that mean that they would die? Zhou Qingyun pushed Ren Wanyan away and suddenly felt that her boyfriend in front of her was extremely unfamiliar. It was as if he had become a different person ever since he came to Shanghai. Then she turned around and rushed out. Ren Wanyan naturally followed closely behind. Ren Baqian and the Empress sat on the sofa and watched this farce with amusement. What is she afraid of? The Empress was a little puzzled. Even if there were 12 heads, what was there to be afraid of? When the Aboriginals killed their enemies or prey, they would always choose the corpses of the stronger ones as their spoils of war and hang them in front of their houses to celebrate during the New Year. Therefore, the Empress found it difficult to understand this kind of fear and found it very strange. Ren Baqian understood what she was afraid of, but there was no need for the Empress to explain. It seems that the two of them can't eat here. It just so happens that those idiots are buried outside, so we can enjoy a candlelight dinner. Ren Baqian smiled as he got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner for them. In fact, the pressure cooker had already been stewing the meat that was brought back from Dayo, the Earth will level Hei Langjun. Tonight's dish was pork stew with pickled cabbage. Although the name sounded completely different from a candlelight dinner, who cared? To the Westerners, steak was equivalent to pork stew with pickled cabbage. Moreover, to the Empress, there was no difference between steak and pork stew with pickled cabbage. The pork had been stewing for almost 3 hours. This Hei Longjuan's meat was very tough. After all, it was at the Earth will level, so it wasn't easy to cook. However, the taste was very fragrant, and the energy contained in 1 kilogram was equivalent to 5 kilograms of ordinary beef and mutton. This pot was almost enough to satisfy the Empress's non-combat needs. Of course, it was still a long way from satiating her hunger. Just as Ren Baqian was preparing dinner, 3 police cars drove up quickly without sirens on. In a car outside the villa, a man asked doubtfully, "Boss, there are police. What happened?" "Let's take a look first. Have they stopped at the entrance of the target villa? Get closer. If there's a problem, identify yourself immediately." "Captain, there is indeed someone buried in the courtyard. Only his head is exposed." The police car stopped outside the courtyard and shone its headlights into the courtyard. Immediately, someone in the police car in front reported, "Rescue him immediately and call for emergency help. At the same time, take control of the people in the villa. Move out." An order was immediately issued from the walkie-talkie. If an ordinary person was buried up to their chest, they would be unable to breathe due to the gradual compression of the soil. Therefore, there was a saying that went, "When the soil reaches your neck, you're not far from death." Furthermore, because the person was buried in the soil, blood would rush to the head due to the pressure, which was very dangerous. Therefore, these police officers were very nervous. Upon hearing the order, more than 10 people in the 3 cars opened their doors and rushed into the villa. Team 3, take control of the people in the villa. The rest of you, follow me to rescue the person, someone shouted. More than 10 people turned their heads in unison to look at the police officers who rushed into the courtyard with flashlights. Their faces were full of ferocity. The dozen police officers were shocked by this scene and had goosebumps all over their bodies. They stopped in their tracks and almost fell. After all, this scene was indeed a little scary. The police officer in front was stunned for a moment and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. These people seemed to still be conscious. Quickly rescue them and get them out. "Brat, what are you guys doing? Rescue all of you." The winged cavalry warriors didn't react at first, but they were furious when they saw these people picking up the shovels on the ground and trying to dig themselves out. "Boss buried us here and you guys want to dig us out? What if boss wants to beat us up? Boss is so fierce. If we get kicked, we might not be able to get out of bed for a few days. Are you guys trying to get me killed?" Let's see who dares. A few of the winged cavalry warriors shouted. Their shoulders shook, and the soil around them flew in all directions. Following which, they pulled their hands out of the soil and slammed them on the ground. Their entire bodies shot out of the ground like cannonballs. A few burly men, who weighed more than 150 kilograms, sprang out of the soil and gave the police another shock. The visual impact of this scene was too great. It was as if they had seen the old demon of the Black Mountain, and they immediately felt unwell. Let's see who dares to dig me out. A few of the winged cavalry warriors glared at the police officers. Their eyes were like copper bells, and they were full of ferocity. Since you have already come out, there's no need to dig any more. The police officers were still a little confused. Who are these people? How could they jump out of the soil by themselves after being buried so deeply? The winged cavalry warriors looked at each other and silently jumped into the pit again. We received a police report saying that more than 10 people were buried here. What are you guys doing? The police officers were also a little confused. What has it got to do with you guys? Let's go, let's go. Those winged cavalry warriors said impatiently. At this moment, the people from the Messier 87 department also entered the villa. They pulled the police officer who was leading the team aside and whispered a few words to him. Then, they took out their IDs and showed them to the police officer. The team leader then waved at the others with a baffled look on his face. False alarm, retreat. Suwei, bury me. Don't let boss see. Bury me while you're at it. Suwei was also very loyal. Without any hesitation, he jumped out of the pit with a shovel and buried the others. Then, he jumped into the pit and pondered deeply. Chapter 670. Want to go up and take a look? Rinpoche parked the car in front of the martial arts center, turned around, and pressed on the keyboard with one hand. He placed the other hand behind the Empress's head, lifted a strand of her fine black hair, and slowly twirled it with his fingers. The Empress slapped Rinpoche's claw until it was swollen before saying coldly, "I'm not interested." In that case, I'll go up and take a look. Rinpoche retracted his hand and sniffed the fragrance between his fingers. Although he already understood the development of the dojo from the reports, he still wanted to see it with his own eyes. Rinpoche took out a pair of sunglasses from the glove compartment of the front passenger seat and helped the Empress put them on. After adjusting the sunglasses, he smiled and said, "This way, others won't be able to see your face clearly. I don't want to see a crowd around the car when I come back. I'll be back soon." When Rinpoche entered the martial arts center, the two receptionists still remembered him. Upon seeing him, they hurriedly greeted him, "Boss." "It's all right, I'll go up and take a look." Rinpoche waved his hand to dismiss them and went up to the second floor. Before he even reached the second floor, he could hear shouts coming from the second floor. When he reached the second floor, he could see more than 20 people practicing martial arts in the huge space. There were also more than 10 people sitting by the side drinking water. It wasn't one of the winged cavalry warriors who was leading the training, but a strong man in his 30s. Previously, Rinpoche had heard from Ding Jie that this person was the instructor of Renren Martial Arts School. When those people came to provoke Lu Chenggu, they were tricked by Lu Chenggu. However, when the winged cavalry warrior kicked the sandbag, they were almost scared to death. Without another word, they left the martial arts center with their tails between their legs. Since they were able to practice martial arts at Renren Martial Arts Center, they were naturally interested in combat. Even though they were frightened at first when they saw an expert like the winged cavalry, they decided to join the martial arts center after pondering for a few days. Not only that, he even bragged about it to his fellow disciples. The people from Renren Martial Arts School couldn't take it anymore. "You guys can leave, but you still want to come back and brag about other martial arts schools?" Even if he left, he would still smash the pot. Then, the coach of the Renren Martial Arts School came over for an exchange. The result was obvious. That instructor was now the only inner disciple in the dojo. More than half of the Renren Martial Arts School's disciples followed suit. Boss. Rinpoche stood at the side for a while and saw Lu Chengwen and Lu Chenggu jogging over. His voice finally attracted the attention of the people who were practicing martial arts at the side of the field. "Boss, why are you here?" Lu Chengwen asked eagerly. "I'm just looking around. It's not bad and quite lively." Ren Baqin nodded. Most of them were brought here by Peng Kai-huai. Only a few came later. "After all, boss, you said that you don't want to advertise it. There aren't many people who come and see this martial arts school. The fees aren't low, so there aren't many people who sign up," Lu Chengwen explained. Peng Kai-huai was the name of the strong man. It was said that he was originally a first-class Sanda athlete at the provincial level. After he retired, he opened the Renren Martial Arts School. He was quite famous in Shanghai. That's fine. If there were outstanding talents, even if they couldn't pay the tuition fees, they could still be recruited and paid in installments after they got a job. As for ordinary disciples, there's no point in accepting more of them, Ren Baqin said casually. "I understand," Lu Chengwen answered. He was secretly thinking that the boss didn't open this martial arts school for money. He didn't know what kind of talents the boss was talking about. It seemed like he had to pay more attention to such people in the future. Logically speaking, those big martial arts schools and sects should have disciples that the boss wanted, right? "Stop for a while. Kai-huai, come over here." Lu Chengwen asked everyone to stop and called Peng Kai-huai over. "This is the boss. Remember him?" Lu Chengwen said. "Hello, boss." Peng Kai-huai looked curiously at the valiant young man in front of him. He was about 20 years old and looked like he was in a high position. His imposing manner made Peng Kai-huai feel a faint sense of oppression. However, he didn't look like someone who practiced martial arts, as he lacked the aura of someone who practiced martial arts. "Come, practice with me." Ren Baqin smiled. His hands were itching to fight. In Dayo, regardless of whether it was Tong Lan or the bodyguards, he couldn't beat any of them. He had been working hard but had never won. On Earth, most of the people he came into contact with were ordinary people, and there was no point in bullying them. However, this Peng Kai-huai in front of him was originally a first-class Sanda athlete at the provincial level. Furthermore, he had been training in the martial arts school for 2 months. Ren Baqin could use him to test his standards. Peng Kai-huai was a little surprised. Logically speaking, such a high-ranking person wouldn't personally participate in a sparring match. It's rare for the boss to be interested. "Practice with him," Lu Chengwu immediately said. "Okay." Peng Kai-huai nodded and thought to himself that he would go easy on Ren Baqin. However, he couldn't go overboard. It wouldn't be good if the other party felt that he wasn't capable. The two of them walked to the arena in the martial arts school. The students immediately surrounded them and whispered to each other. "Is this the boss of the martial arts school? He looks quite valiant. I wonder if he is a match for the coach. If having a good physique is useful, why do you still practice boxing? After all, he is the boss of the martial arts school. It's impossible that he doesn't know anything, right? The coach is a first-class athlete at the provincial level. Not many people can beat him, right?" Ren Baqin took the boxing gloves, fiddled with them, and threw them back. "He doesn't need to wear this or any protective gear. Put it on for him." Peng Kai-huai was in a difficult position. According to him, it was best for the boss to put on the protective gear. It would be fine if the boss hit him, but it would be troublesome if he hit the boss. However, after thinking that he was going to go easy on Ren Baqin, he decided to let the boss like it. After a while, the two of them stood in the middle of the arena. Lu Chengwen waved his hand and said, "Begin." Peng Kai-huai stared at Ren Baqin attentively and waited for his next move. Ren Baqin pondered that he was a man-wheel expert. He couldn't possibly make the first move when sparring with someone who wasn't even a man-wheel expert. He just stood there with his hands open and waited for Peng Kai-huai to take the initiative to attack. The two of them stared at each other. "Come." Ren Baqin saw that Peng Kai-huai wasn't coming over and could only beckon with his hand. "Be careful, boss," Peng Kai-huai said. He tiptoed and quickly approached Ren Baqin. Even though he had learned the boxing of death for 2 months, he still couldn't change his boxing habits. The Aboriginals used the boxing of death, with steady steps and powerful movements. On the other hand, Peng Kai-huai's movements were mainly light and agile. After approaching Ren Baqin, He threw a jab. Then he threw another jab. Rinpoche looked at his opponent's incoming fist and tilted his head slightly to avoid it. He said unhurriedly, "Too slow." Peng Kaiwai's eyes focused and his next punch pierced through the air toward Rinpoche's chest. Rinpoche still turned around unhurriedly and appeared behind Peng Kaiwai in a flash. Too slow. Compared to Tong Lan, his speed was too slow. It was like the difference between a horse carriage and a Ferrari. He didn't notice it during his daily life, but when he was sparring on the arena, he realized that his opponent's movements were like slow motion in his eyes. It was really too slow. He could see every movement clearly, and every detail was reflected in his mind. He could even guess his opponent's next move based on the subtle movements of his body. His body is slightly twisting, his waist is exerting force, and his shoulders are sinking. Is his next move a whip kick? Rinpoche's eyes were on his opponent's legs. Then he deftly took 2 steps back to avoid it. Move your left hand back. It's a straight punch again. Rinpoche turned around unhurriedly. His opponent's fist almost brushed past his chest. Is this the difference between a man-wheel expert and someone who hasn't reached the wheel level? Chapter 671. Everyone outside the arena was dumbfounded as they looked at the 2 people on the stage. Peng Kaiwai's movements were already extremely fast, and they wouldn't be able to react in time. However, the other person just casually walked around the stage and dodged all the attacks. Not even the edges of the attacks could be touched. It was as if they had rehearsed in advance. Peng Kaiwai, who was on the stage, was even more shocked than the audience. Even if it wasn't difficult for a national first-class Sanzhou athlete to defeat him, it was impossible for him to walk leisurely on the stage like this. He felt like he was playing with his nephew when he was a few years old. However, he was now playing the role of his nephew, and the other party was playing with him. At first, he wanted to be waterproof, but now that he had tried his best, he couldn't even touch the other party's side. Was the gap between them so big? Stop! Rinpoche stopped and said faintly. Peng Kaiwai stood on the stage and gasped for breath. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The boss was actually a super expert. You are currently the only inner disciple, which shows that you are talented. However, you're still too slow. Practice hard. Rinpoche nodded at Peng Kaiwai as encouragement. He thought he would be very happy. After being abused for so long, he could finally abuse others. Logically speaking, he should be happy, right? However, he didn't feel happy at all. It was dull and a little boring. Sure enough, there was no meaning in abusing noobs. It wasn't as exciting as fighting with Tong Lan. Rinpoche was suddenly stunned. Damn, could it be that he had awakened a strange hobby? Huh, how is that possible? Rinpoche immediately shook his head. It seemed that he would only feel excited when he fought and won against an opponent who was comparable to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't find it. It was so lonely to be invincible. Rinpoche jumped off the stage and walked toward the staircase with his hands in his pockets. Bus. The 3rd floor is that way. The Liu brothers quickly followed Rinpoche. I'm not going up. I'm just here to take a look. Now that I'm done, I'm leaving. Be careful not to let those 2 idiots cause trouble. They haven't caused any trouble recently, right? Rinpoche asked casually. No, the Liu brothers quickly replied. You should also go to that martial arts center. Although Wan Yin often stays there, he doesn't have enough experience. Yes. After Rinpoche brought the Liu brothers downstairs, the disciples on the 2nd floor couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. I didn't expect the owner of this dojo to be a master. What level do you think it is? National first-class Sanda athlete? Look at how he's strutting around. Even a national first-class Sanda athlete wouldn't be able to do that. Did anyone record it? I'm recording. Someone immediately shouted with his phone. Give me a copy. In the future, if anyone says that martial arts are bad, I'll use it to slap his face. Send me a copy too. I've sent it to the group. Download it yourselves. Go back, don't worry about me. Rinpoche waved his hand at the door. Take care, boss, the 2 said eagerly behind him. Renbachien pushed open the door and saw the Empress standing on the other side of the car. Her fine black hair was gently fluttering in the wind. As expected, there were many people standing around sizing up the Empress. So many people? And he's even taking pictures with his phone? Can't you be a little more shameless? Renbachien aggressively strode over. When he turned around, he immediately knew why so many people were looking at the Empress. The Empress was leaning against the car and fiddling with her phone. However, there was someone lying on the ground. It was a man in a suit. His face was plastered to the ground, but it could be seen that he was very young. The Empress, who was dressed in red, was stepping on the back of his head. She didn't use much force, but he couldn't move at all. Blind. Renbachien opened the car door and asked casually. There was no need to ask about the situation. Even though the Empress was wearing sunglasses, the half of her face that was exposed and the aura she exuded was enough to make people's hearts flutter. "Aunt," the Empress said faintly. She exerted a little force with her foot, and the man fainted. The main reason was that she didn't want to hear the clamor of an ant when she lifted her foot. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself and would slap him to death. Soon after, the Empress went around to the other side of the car, and the two of them swaggered off. "They've left. Let the police come over," someone in a car nearby said through a walkie-talkie. "Understood." The two men on the other side of the street put down their phones and said to the police officer in front of them, "Sorry to trouble you. Also, tell that person to shut up and not get himself into trouble." Understood. The two police officers didn't have any doubts at all. After all, the other party's identification had already explained everything. "Brother, I apologize to you on behalf of Qingyun." On the way, Renbachien received a call from Renwanyan. With a smile on his face, he gently tapped on the steering wheel with his hand and said, "Why are you apologizing? Because she called the police?" "Yeah." Renwanyan responded softly and said, "Also, that day at the villa, she ran away." Renbachien said unhurriedly, "Actually, there's no need to apologize. You can see that she has a good upbringing. No matter what happens, her first reaction is to call the police. You can see that she knows how to protect herself. However, this also means that she can easily sell out anyone other than you. If necessary, she can even sell you out." "Brother!" Renwanyan's heart tightened, and he hurriedly tried to defend her. Renbachien interrupted him and said, "Listen to me. Do you know why I said that? It's because her values are normal and belong to a normal person. This can be seen from the fact that she immediately called the police after leaving the villa. Growing up, she had too much respect and apprehension. There were too many people and too many methods that could make her submit. In fact, I don't object to you being with her, but you have to know that you have to hide a lot of things from her. Under such circumstances, she knows that you have a lot of things to hide from her. How long you can stay together is up to you." "Do we have so many things to hide from her?" "Brother, what are you talking about?" The more Renwanyan listened, the more puzzled he became. There are a lot of things that need to be hidden from her. Although it's not something that can't be done, there are a lot of things that I control that others have been peeping at. Just like the 9th set of guiding techniques that I taught you and your parents. It's the simplest thing, but it's also an extremely important national secret. Therefore, you have to know what you can let her know and what you can't." "I got it," Renwanyan said. "If one day you find out that she's investigating things that you haven't told her, then it means that there's someone behind her. Do you understand what I mean? Will that really happen?" Renwanyan still found it a little hard to accept. "Do you know why I don't object to you being together? If you separate from her, then the women that appear next to you are likely to have all kinds of backgrounds and motives. There will always be people who will use all kinds of methods to send all kinds of women to you. As for her, from her current performance, it can be seen that she is still clean. Therefore, I don't mind if she calls the police. I just want you to hide some things from her. However, even if she is clean now, it doesn't guarantee that she will be clean in the future," Renbachien said. "Isn't that too exaggerated?" Renwanyan felt that his brother's words were a little too exaggerated. It was as if he was suffering from paranoia. Renbachien sighed and felt that he should tell Renwanyan something. Therefore he said, "It's more exaggerated than you think. Do you remember the cow bones that you saw in the villa? I can tell you that they are human bones. The owner of the bones is a secret agent of a foreign country. I have something that a lot of people would want. They can't get it from me, but you are a good candidate. You are my younger brother, and you will gradually come into contact with some things in the future. They are all things that many people abroad and even in the country want. So, you are a very good breakthrough. Hiss. Ren Wanyin took a deep breath. He started to regret making this call. Because of Ren Baqian's words, he felt as if he had fallen into a huge spider web. Now, I have a cooperation with the country, so you don't have to think too much. I am telling you all this just to let you know some things. Actually, you have another option. That is to leave the martial arts school and do whatever you like. No one will find trouble with you. You won't have any worries, and you will be like an ordinary rich person, Ren Baqian said leisurely. We are biological brothers, aren't we? Ren Wanyin asked on the other end of the phone. Yes. Ren Baqian revealed a smile. I am telling you all this so that you can be mentally prepared. As for the rest, you can think about it yourself. Then, he said half-truthfully, in fact, if you go to a nightclub to look for women, I will be more at ease. I know a good nightclub. It hurts. How did you know? The Empress turned around and looked at him calmly with a faint smile on her face. Of course, I am teasing him. How would I know about such things? Ren Baqian looked straight at the Empress and replied nonchalantly. Who did you learn this trick from? Television, the Empress replied confidently. Television has taught so many people astray. Ever since television came into being, society has become disharmonious. Ren Baqian lamented bitterly. Then he righteously said, It's all a misunderstanding. Let go of my ears first. Tell me, how did you know? I'm wronged. More wrong than Do. More wrong than Chang. Recommend my friends, Peerless Godly Kung Fu app. Watch the app to learn from the Sunflower Treasure. Chapter 672. Ren Baqian held the Empress's hand while his other hand rested on a stack of boxes that contained cakes, candies, and wine. As the light around them began to distort, the scene in front of them instantly changed to that of the Empress's bedroom. Then, they saw a bespectacled lady in metal armor standing in front of them. She cupped her fists and greeted, Your Majesty! The pair of red-rimmed glasses added a feminine charm to Exenge's appearance. Why are you waiting here? The Empress let go of Ren Baqian's hand and tore the ropes around the boxes. She took down a box from above and opened it. It was full of candies. Your Majesty, Great Xia has invaded again, Exenge said in a deep voice. Great Xia had started preparing a few months ago. The Empress had received the news long ago, and even Hong Wu had started preparing. As a result, they weren't surprised to hear this. The Empress, who was about to grab a handful of candies, paused. She took out a piece of Dove chocolate, unhurriedly tore open the packaging, stuffed the chocolate into her mouth, turned around and asked, When? What's the situation? The Great Xia army left Tiesua Pass last night, crossed the border, and started attacking Ping City, Shun City, and Zus City this morning, Exenge reported. Tell the general-in-chief who supports the nation to be careful, the Empress said. At this time last year, Great Xia used some unknown method to persuade Lu Pinghai to attack Hongwu. This time, Hongwu was probably the main target of the other party. As long as Hongwu was fine, the Protectorate of the North wouldn't be in chaos. If 20,000 Aboriginal warriors were to be used to defend the city, it would be enough to defend against the enemy's 500,000 soldiers. In addition, the Chen nation also strengthened their attack this morning, Exenge added. They can't sit still anymore? The Chen nation is just a small nation. Their army is good at fighting on the water and not on land. What can they do even if they launch an all-out attack? The Empress sneered. Exenge, you can leave first. Go and release Tong Jinye and Qin Chuan. Then, inform the ministers to attend the court meeting in 2 hours. Your Majesty, this time, Great Xia is mainly for revenge and to save the Yun nation. Ren Baqian said. Our target is their 500,000 soldiers. As long as they are eliminated, Great Xia will fall into internal strife. No matter who wins or loses, they won't have the energy to worry about us for the next 10 years. I know. The Empress nodded. I'll bring these things back first. Her Majesty still needs to change her clothes, Rinpoche said. They're all mine. The Empress pointed at the stack of boxes and raised her chin slightly. There's also a box of street lamp caps inside. Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You can take the lamppost, the rest are mine. The Empress continued to assert her sovereignty. Rinpoche pointed at the box and said, wine? Actually, he still wanted to bring some wine back. Occasionally, he would want to drink a little in the middle of the night. He didn't know when he got this habit. He probably wanted to celebrate his arrival in this world every night. It's all mine. The Empress didn't budge an inch. Rinpoche had no choice but to carry the box of light bulbs and leave. When he returned to the courtyard, he saw Tian Tian and Gun Gun getting bigger and bigger. They were now taller than him, reminding him that pandas weren't cats but bears. Fortunately, even though these two fellows were a little big and stupid, their characters were still pretty good. When they saw Rinpoche, they pounced on him with their mouths full of fangs and bit his arm. Then he slapped them away. Well, when they were young, they loved to bite like this. At that time, it wasn't a big deal. But now, if they were to bite again, even the skin of an ordinary person would be torn off. The two of you are getting uglier and uglier. Rinpoche looked at the two fellows who were rolling on the ground and acting cute. He felt regretful. They were so cute when they were young, but it was a pity that they grew up crooked. After raising them for so long, he couldn't bear to give them to the beast park anymore. The listening cat cub, the golden retriever, quickly took out two moldy dried fruits from the fur on the back of Tian Tian's neck. It compared the sizes of the fruits in its hands and hid the bigger one. It jumped onto Rinpoche's shoulder and passed the smaller one to him. You little fellow. Rinpoche stretched out his fingers and rubbed its head. Then he pointed at the two pandas rolling on the ground with a worried face and said, Don't be crooked like them in the future. Ch. The golden retriever called out and passed the smaller dried fruit to him. Forget it, keep it for yourself. After Rinpoche finished speaking, the golden retriever immediately jumped back onto Tian Tian's neck and hid the dried fruit in its fur. Indeed, it's made of plastic. Rinpoche couldn't help but shake his head. He opened the box and called two guards to follow him to change the light bulbs of the street lamps. At noon the next day, the plaza between Beihong District and Julian District was crowded with people. The blazing sun in the sky didn't reduce the enthusiasm of the people around the plaza. The entire Public Order Bureau was mobilized to keep the onlookers away. What are so many people doing? A passerby who was carrying goods asked in confusion when he saw the situation. I don't know. I heard that Her Majesty will be here in a while, the person who was called immediately replied. Roughly when? I don't know the exact time, but it should be soon. Upon hearing this, the passerby started to hesitate. Was it more important to deliver the goods or to wait and see the Empress? These two thoughts battled intensely in his mind for 2 seconds, and the thought of waiting to see the Empress won a hard-fought victory. At this moment, waves of cheers came from the crowd in the distance. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Chaotic shouts spread throughout the plaza. Upon hearing this voice, everyone knew that the Empress had arrived. Sure enough, the crowd began to part like a tide, and the Empress's imperial carriage, which was followed by 2 rows of guards, slowly entered the plaza. Following the Empress were the court officials. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty! As the curtain of the imperial carriage was lifted, everyone saw the Empress get up and step out of the carriage, and there was another round of cheers. Her Majesty is really loved and respected, Rinpoche said. Because Her Majesty is the most beautiful treasure of Dayo, Tongjinya said. He then looked at Rinpoche with a look that said, You've taken advantage of me. Her Majesty taking a fancy to you is the greatest blessing in your life. Because of the many decrees issued by Her Majesty, a lot of the burden on the people has been lightened. Moreover, Her Majesty is the Empress of the Aboriginals, so the people will naturally love and respect her, too, one added. Everyone dismounted from their mounts and looked up at the cement building that was about 60 meters tall. The building was very rough and didn't have much decoration. In the eyes of the Aboriginals, as long as it was big enough, it would meet their aesthetic standards. At 60 meters tall and 67 meters, it could be said to be the tallest man-made building in the world. To the Aboriginals, it was already a masterpiece. In the end, under Rinpoche's strong request, a layer of colorful stones of different sizes was pasted on the surface as decoration, giving the bell tower a dreamy look. At this time, the top of the bell tower was completely covered with the Empress's favorite red silk cloth. Ever since the clock was installed, no one had seen its true appearance. Chapter 673. At this time, the wooden door at the bottom of the clock tower was open, and a few men in coarse clothes walked out of the tower. The one in front was the old man that Rinpoche had met before. He was Zhang Juanjing's elder and the current leader of the Zhang family in Lan City. He was the first to step forward and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Your Majesty and Sirs. Are the adjustments complete?" Rinpoche stepped forward and asked. The old man and the people behind him were originally suppressing their excitement, but now they were in full bloom. Everyone's face was glowing. "Sir Ren, everything is ready. In another 15 minutes, the first bell will ring." Although Rinpoche was the one who took out the blueprint of the clock tower, the dials and the mechanical structure inside were completely completed by the Zhang family. It was a great honor for the Zhang family to have this clock tower appear in the world. As long as this clock tower existed, the name of the Zhang family would be remembered. Even if this clock tower was gone, the name of the Zhang family would definitely be mentioned in the history books in the future. How could they be excited about going down in history just like that? At this time, the Zhang family was really impressed by Rinpoche. Everything that Rinpoche took out could benefit the Zhang family's craftsmen, and they could even gain a great reputation. It was really not a loss to work for such a person. "Just don't make any mistakes," Rinpoche reminded. "Sir Ren, don't worry. We have already simulated it many times in the residence. We started checking the clock tower yesterday, and there are no problems. I can guarantee with my head," the old man said. "Keep your head. This thing is still a dead object and isn't as important as your head." Rinpoche shook his head. Master craftsmen were also rare talents in this world. "Thank you, Sir Ren. I'm confident." The old man smiled. Rinpoche's words warmed his heart. After all, it felt good to be valued. Especially when the other party was an expert in this field. It seemed like it wasn't a bad move to move the whole family to Dayo. "Calculate the time and remind me when there's still 15 minutes left," Rinpoche said. "Don't worry, my lord." The old man looked up at the sun, then took out an hourglass and held it in his palm. Taking advantage of this time, the others were also sizing up the colorful clock tower. The stone decorations on the surface made this clock tower a little different from the rough style that Dayo had always had. However, under the sunlight, it reflected various colors of light, which was a kind of dreamy color. "Does Your Majesty like it?" Rinpoche whispered into her ear. "Not bad." The Empress nodded. "I want to build one in the palace. Why don't we build another observatory on top of the clock tower? At night, I can accompany Your Majesty to watch the stars from there." "Observatory?" The Empress turned her head and asked. "A place to look at the stars. The roof is fine. We can also install telescopes in the observatory, and the starry sky will be even more beautiful. His Majesty hasn't seen it with the telescope yet. Astronomical telescopes can zoom in on the starry sky by 100 or even 1,000 times. When the time comes, we can drink under the stars and enjoy the scenery of the night sky. Isn't that great?" When the Empress heard this, she felt a little tempted. "Then I would like to take a look. Remember, it must be prettier than this." "Okay." Rinpoche felt countless murderous gazes around him and gently laughed in the Empress's ear. These people's gazes were like needles, and Rinpoche felt that his back was about to be pierced with countless holes. "This is my wife. Are you guys going to bite me? I want to whisper in front of all of you." Rinpoche simply didn't retract his head. Instead, he moved his lips closer to the Empress's ear, as if he was placing his head on her shoulder. Many people around him were enraged. Although they already knew that Her Majesty had chosen a husband and had seen him more than once, they were still enraged to see this scene. "What are you doing?" The Empress noticed Rinpoche's strange behavior and frowned. "Many people are envious of me. I have to give them a chance to be jealous." Rinpoche laughed mischievously. "Boring. Sir, it's almost time. It will be past noon in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Your Majesty, you will be the one to remove the red cloth in a while," Rinpoche said. "It's best to do it right before the clock rings." "All right. Just pull this rope downward," Rinpoche said as he pointed to a thin rope hanging from the side. "There's no need." The Empress didn't even look at the rope. She calculated the time in her mind, tapped her feet lightly on the ground, and rose into the sky like a red cloud. As she swept past the clock, the circle of red cloth was also pulled into the sky along with her. The golden face of the clock, which was completely made of brass, was completely revealed to everyone and emitted a golden luster under the sunlight. The melodious sound of the bell rang at the same time, as if the prologue had been lifted the moment the Empress removed the red cloth. The bell rang 12 times in a row and melodiously drifted through the city. One after another, it was like a musical note falling from the sky. Coupled with the golden luster of the clock, it gave off a sacred feeling and amazed everyone. Whether it was the public order officials, the surrounding commoners, or even the people in other corners of Lan City, they all looked up at the sound of the bell with amazement on their faces. Even though the Empress was standing at the top of the clock tower, her red figure was overshadowed by something else for the first time. This is the so-called clock tower. It's used to keep time, right? It's really ingenious. Tong Jingye sighed from below. In the future, there's no need to look at the sundial. As long as you're in Lan City, you can see the clock tower when you look up and know the time. Whether it's windy or rainy, day or night, you can see it. There are braziers on both sides of the clock, which can be lit at night, Rinpoche said. I actually want to let the people from Great Xia and the Yun Nation take a look and ask them if they can make this thing. Tong Jingye laughed heartily. He was looking forward to seeing the reaction of people who came to Lan City and saw this clock tower. Great Xia and the Yun Nation don't have it. This is the only one in this world, the old man from the Zhang family said while stroking his beard. However, if they see this thing, they might be able to figure it out after a few years or more. It doesn't matter. By the time they figure it out, we will already have a better one, Rinpoche said. That depends on Sir Ren, Tong Jingye said with some regret. In fact, the Ministry of Works is the most suitable for Sir Ren. Unfortunately, Sir Ren is still unwilling to join the Ministry of Staff. For the rest of the afternoon, countless people raised their heads near the clock tower to study how this thing rotated. Every time the clock chimed on the hour, they would burst into cheers. Most of them felt that there must be a few people inside the clock tower constantly rotating the hands on the clock tower. At night, the crowd began to gradually disperse. After nightfall, the braziers on both sides of the clock tower lit up with flames that were 5 feet high, brightly illuminating the entire clock tower. The people in the city, who had already been amazed by the clock tower for the whole day, were once again amazed by the clock tower in the night. Many of the people who had dispersed returned to the bottom of the clock tower and looked up at the light in the night sky. For half a month in a row, the citizens of Lan City, who had nothing better to do after nightfall to beat their children and clap for their loved ones, sat in their courtyards, looked up at the clock tower in the distance, chatted, beat their children, and then returned to their houses to clap for their loved ones. Chapter 674. Rinpoche walked up to the podium and placed the book on the table. He looked down and saw an empty seat in the middle. He asked doubtfully, Su Peng, where's Du Laolu? Why isn't he here? Su Peng was already worried. When he heard Rinpoche's question, his expression didn't improve. He stood up and replied, Teacher, he can't come. But Rinpoche's heart skipped a beat when he saw Su Peng's expression. Su Peng calculated in his heart. By now, the Du and Tu families should already know about it. There was no need to hide it anymore, so he said, Du Lao Lu eloped. Rinpoche's face immediately lit up. The other students were also in an uproar and looked at Su Peng with their mouths agape. Du Lao Lu actually eloped? Rinpoche immediately recalled the scene that he had witnessed in the tavern. At that time, both he and the Empress saw it very clearly. He thought that it was a form of growth for students to experience such things, but he didn't expect Du Lao Lu to be so ruthless and elope. When did this happen? Rinpoche asked. It should have been yesterday afternoon after school, Su Peng replied. Rinpoche frowned and pondered for a while. After that, he inquired about Tu Yu's family background. Tu Yu's father was called Tu Hong, an assistant in the Ministry of Justice and a secondary class, rank 4 official. Tu Hong and the Minister of Revenue, Tu Wan, were close relatives. As for Du Lao Lu, his family background was similar to Tu Yu's, but he was the most useless third son. As for the girl with the surname Shi, he didn't ask about her. However, Du Lao Lu and the girl's elopement had directly trampled the faces of the Tu family and the girl's family into the mud. Both sides wouldn't let him off. It was still unknown whether the two of them could escape. If they didn't succeed, his fate would be worrying. If they succeeded, he would have to give up on his studies and fade into the masses. It would be a pity. At the thought of this, Rinpoche felt a little regretful. He originally thought that Du Changkong had made some progress and would have good prospects in the future. He didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen. All right, continue with the lesson. Rinpoche collected his thoughts and slapped the table. However, the people below didn't have the mood to listen to the lecture. All of them were whispering to each other and winking at each other. Usually, Rinpoche would use a gun and bullets to teach them what classroom discipline was. However, he wasn't in the mood today. However, after only half of the lesson, an angry female voice could be heard from outside. Principal Rin, is Du Changkong here? Needless to say, someone had come looking for him. Rinpoche slammed the book on the table and said in a deep voice, Read the book yourself first. As he walked out, the classroom immediately burst into an uproar. A bunch of people crowded at the door and in front of the bed, looking outside. Who are you? What's the matter? When Rinpoche arrived at the entrance of the academy, he saw a lady in her 40s or 50s standing there. She was wearing a wide-sleeved robe with 5 or 6 burly attendants behind her. All of them looked menacing. Fortunately, these people knew that they couldn't barge into the academy. Principal Ren, my daughter, Shi, was abducted by Du Lao Lu yesterday and has not been seen since then. I want to ask him where my daughter has gone, the lady angrily asked. It just so happens that Du Lao Lu has been abducted to an unknown place. If Madam sees him, remember to inform me. The rules of the academy must still be followed. Those who play truant without reason will be punished, Rinpoche said calmly. You are asking me for him? I still don't know who to look for. Is Du Lao Lu not here? The lady asked in an overbearing tone. If you can get the warrant from Her Majesty, you can come in and look for him, Rinpoche said unhappily as he stood at the door. The lady carefully looked at Rinpoche's expression. Her face darkened and she finally said hatefully, Principal Ren has taught a good student. Let's go. Rinpoche cursed in his heart. Do you think I'm a scapegoat? Why are you putting all the blame on me? You are only looking for your daughter now that she's gone? Don't you know why she's gone? I even lost a student. In any case, after a year of my education, she's a talent who can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Rinpoche looked at the lady's back, flicked his sleeves, turned around, and entered the courtyard. Close the door. Seeing that Rinpoche was unhappy, the students who were originally blocking the door immediately scurried back to their seats in a panic. After school, Su Peng found Rinpoche and asked, Teacher, can you help Du Lao Lu? He and Shi like each other, and he even said that he would propose marriage to the Shi family after he achieved some results. In the end, Tu Yu interfered. How can I help? Rinpoche asked. If Su Peng had looked for him previously, he might have been able to help. Now that Du Lao Lu had run away, how could he help? Su Peng felt that Rinpoche's words made sense. He had thought too much, cupped his fists, bowed, and left with a heavy heart. Rinpoche shook his head when he saw that Su Peng had left. He wasn't too worried. After all, the youngsters of the Aboriginals weren't like the youngsters on Earth who couldn't differentiate between the 5 grains. In any case, they were at the Kismet heaven level and were much stronger than ordinary will experts. As long as they didn't provoke the beasts in the deep forests, they wouldn't be in much danger. It all depended on when the 2 of them would be caught and brought back. Many of the Aboriginals were originally hunters in the mountains, and many of them were good at tracking. Rinpoche wasn't optimistic that the 2 of them would be together after eloping, and it was only a matter of time before they were caught and brought back. After returning to the palace, Rinpoche first asked for the Empress's whereabouts. She was still discussing with the ministers about Great Xia's movements in the imperial court. This was because Great Xia's movements over the past half a month seemed to be very aggressive on the surface. They had been attacking the cities nonstop for more than half a month, but the 500,000 soldiers surrounding the 3 cities hadn't made much progress for more than half a month. This was somewhat suspicious. In the previous battle, Ziyue City was breached in just one night. The Deputy Protector General was besieged by many experts and died on the spot. With such a comparison, the problem could be seen. After returning to Pingle Park, Rinpoche gave Tian Tian and Gun Gun, who were about to pounce on him, a slap each. Then he strolled to a lake in the palace. The lake wasn't considered big, and its diameter was less than 300 meters. There weren't any waterside pavilions or pavilions on it, and it was surrounded by a circle of trees. Through the clear lake water, Rinpoche could see a guy with a body full of green scales lying at the bottom of the lake. Rinpoche first found a comfortable place to sit. It was a rock that protruded from the shore. He felt pretty good as he sat there and enjoyed the surrounding brightness. Then he shouted, "Chishui!" At the bottom of the lake was the Kirin that Rinpoche had ridden before. However, it plunged into the lake after returning to Dayo. Rinpoche would occasionally come to take a look when he had nothing to do, but he had never seen it come out. Rinpoche sat on the shore and muttered, "Everyone has some ideals or dreams. When they are young, their dreams become desires when they grow up. There are always some things that they want to do from the bottom of their hearts. Humans are like this, so is the Kirin, right? Even if it's to pull a cart or be a mount, it should have something that it wants to do, right? For example, a tall, rich, and handsome man who pulls a cart or a heavenly king who rides. Look at you, you stay at the bottom of the lake every day and don't come out even once a year. I'm afraid that moss will grow on your body. Fortunately, you're in the water. Otherwise, your body would stink. Do you know that humans who stay at home every day are called otakus? What should a Kirin be called if it hides in its nest every day? Otakus? Speaking of which, I still don't know if you are male or female. You didn't let me take a look back then. Do you have anything you want to eat? For example, sashimi? I recommend dipping it in wasabi. Horseradish isn't bad either. I quite like the pungent taste of horseradish. Give me a scale, and I'll treat you to sashimi. How about that? After nagging for an hour, Rinpoche got up, feeling a little bored. I'll see you in 2 days. Think about it carefully. After Rinpoche left, Chishui opened its eyes at the bottom of the lake. It was like a light bulb at the bottom of the lake, and its eyes were full of distress. Chapter 675. On the vast grassland, tens of thousands of fork-horned cows and jumping goats were spread out and gnawing on the vegetation on the ground. The sound of hooves could be heard, and a group of cavalrymen riding fork-horned cows appeared at the edge of the grassland. The leader of the group was a bald, burly man. His eyes scanned the entire grassland like a falcon and paused at a certain spot. "Have you found any traces of them?" a lady behind him asked. "No," the burly man replied in a deep voice. He then lowered his head to identify the traces on the ground, pointed in a direction, and said, "They went in that direction. Chase after them." Subsequently, this group of people flew into the distance like a dark cloud. After a long time, a few fork-horned cows that had gathered in a certain place on the grassland dispersed, revealing a young man and woman who were about 17 or 18 years old. "Let's go." The man pulled the woman and fled in another direction. After fleeing for a long time, they stopped and fell directly onto the grassland. I thought we had been discovered just now. The woman was about 17 or 18 years old and wore clothes made of soft fabric. She wasn't considered eye-catching in Lawn City, but she was very attractive outside of Lawn City. The fabric of her clothes wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. The woman wasn't considered extremely beautiful, but she had a wild and heroic spirit that was unique to Aboriginal women. However, there was a trace of fear on her face at this moment. The man had a short layer of hair that stuck to his scalp. He had a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. He was dressed in dark-colored clothes. After a few days of fleeing, his originally youthful face had become firm and resolute. He didn't say anything after hearing the woman's words, but he felt that they had been discovered just now. The person leading the group was the residence's guard, Du Yong. He took care of Du Lao Lu in private, so he pretended not to see Du Lao Lu. "I have let you down." Du Lao Lu sighed. The other party had already chased them nearby, and the chances of them escaping were very small. At this moment, there wasn't much fear in Du Lao's heart. Instead, he felt unreconciled and guilty towards the people around him. If it wasn't for him, the other party wouldn't have had to flee with him from a luxurious life in the Du residence. "I did it willingly." Shi Jiue held his hand tightly and consoled him. The trace of fear on her face disappeared in an instant and was replaced by a sense of determination. "We will definitely escape." Du Laolu held her hand tightly. Regardless of whether it was for himself or Shi Jiue, they had to escape. Shi Jiue nodded. "It would be great if we were ordinary people. You wouldn't be criticized because of your talent, and I wouldn't be forced to marry out. I would be able to live an ordinary life like an ordinary person. That's also something I yearned for." Du Lao's heart ached when he heard this, and he tightened his grip on Shi Jiue's hand. "Let's go. The 19 Rivers is just one more day to the south. It will be difficult for them to track us once we reach there." After the two of them rested for a while, Du Laolu pulled Shi Jiue up. "Go." After a day and a night, the two of them were drenched in sweat. They had originally estimated that they would reach the 19th river in a day and a night, but because they encountered a search party halfway, they had no choice but to change their route. In the end, after a day and a night, they still did not see them. "Hold on a little longer, we are almost there." Shi Jiue dragged Du Laolu up a hill. At this point, Du Laolu was already exhausted. He could only rely on Shi Jiue, who was much stronger than him, to drag him along. "We're there. We are almost there." Shi Jiue gritted her teeth as she climbed with all her might. Even she felt her body go limp at this point, and she was almost at the end of her rope. The two of them had been on the run for 4 whole days. During the last 2 days, they basically didn't eat anything and only ate some wild fruits that they picked along the way to fill their stomachs. However, this was far from enough to satisfy the consumption of their bodies. If it wasn't for the thought that they would have a chance to escape as long as they could reach the 19 Rivers, which was close at hand, she wouldn't have been able to hold on. Their clothes were covered in mud, and many parts of their clothes were tattered. They looked much more pathetic than they had a day ago. After dragging Du Laolu to the top of the hill, Du Laolu immediately collapsed to the ground and gasped for breath. Shi Jiue struggled to stand and look into the distance. "Listen, there is the sound of flowing water. We are not far from the 19 Rivers. We just need to cross this forest in front of us." Shi Jiue sat on the ground with joy. "I heard it. We are about to successfully escape," Du Laolu said with difficulty as he gasped for breath. "It's a pity that you can't cross the forest," a man said as he walked out of the forest. Du Lao's expression changed drastically. Du Laolu struggled to get up. When he saw the figure walking out of the forest, his face turned even paler. "Father, you have really done well," the man said angrily. "Father, let us go." Du Laolu struggled to kneel on the ground. Go where? Where can you go? If you can escape from the pursuit of so many people, I can still look up to you. However, do you think you can hide from others? The Shi family has already set up a trap by the river and is waiting for you. I am here to bring you back so that we can at least save some face, the man said angrily. His voice was filled with resentment that they didn't meet his expectations. 3 days later, the haggard Du Laolu and Shijie were tied to their mounts and escorted back to Lan City. The closer they got to Lan City, the more apprehensive they felt. When they were about to reach the city gates of Lan City, Du Laolu immediately saw that among the people waiting outside the city gates were his mother, his good friend Su Peng, a few other students from the academy, and Tuyu, whom he hated the most. Tuyu walked to the front of Du Laolu and Shijie and looked deeply at Shijie. His eyes were filled with complex emotions, admiration, and hatred. I used to like you very much. Tuyu's voice was very hollow. But I have always liked you. Shijie's face was frosty. A strange smile appeared on Tuyu's face. The marriage has already been decided. Even though such a thing has happened, I will still marry you. His laughter was filled with coldness. Then, he approached Du Laolu and said softly, "Do you think you can escape? Do you think you can remain unscathed after trampling on the Shi and Tu families' faces? Do you know, I really like to see you struggle like bugs with their tails stepped on. However, you are powerless and can only struggle in vain. I want to challenge you to a duel. The winner can marry Shijie." Du Laolu suddenly roared. He knew that if nothing changed, Shijie would definitely marry Tuyu. Tuyu might have loved Shijie in the past, but his words just now made him realize that he would definitely take revenge. He definitely couldn't let Shijie marry Tuyu, even if it meant death. Useless. What a disgrace. A man sitting on a mount behind Du Laolu scolded angrily when he heard his roar. However, he didn't stop Du Laolu. Our marriage has already been decided. Tuyu smiled. Regardless of whether I accept the duel or not, I will marry Shijie. What are you going to use to challenge me? Do you have the capital? You are just a useless person. Even the person you like is already engaged to me. You have nothing. Chapter 676. You were the one who proposed the duel, and the Tu family agreed to it. The duel will be held in a week. You are not allowed to go out until then. Du Laoyo's father threw him into the room and said to him. Before leaving the room, he thought of something and turned to look at Du Laolu. You are really useless. However, I sent you to the Black Bamboo Academy so that you can defeat others one day, not so that you can keep losing. He turned around and slammed the door. Send him 3 meals a day and don't allow him to go out. Sir, someone from the Su family wants to see him. Let him in. A moment later, Su Peng rushed into Du Laoyo's room and shouted anxiously. Are you crazy? Tuyu has the strength of a Kismet heaven expert. Although he hasn't been there for long, you can't compare to him. Du Laolu said expressionlessly, I know, I'm crazy. I've been crazy for a long time. I would only elope with Jiyue if I were crazy, but I have to be crazy this time. If Jiyue marries Tuyu, he will definitely not let her off. What should we do now? Your duel is in a week. You won't be able to defeat him even after a year, let alone in such a short time. Su Peng paced around the room worriedly. I beg you for a favor. Du Laolu sat in front of the table and held his head with one hand. Su Peng stopped pacing and looked at Du Laolu. Say it. I will definitely help if I can. Du Laolu raised his head and said seriously, I should have gone personally, but I can't go out. Help me ask Yagüe. He must have a way. Su Peng hammered his bald head. This was a solution. There was no doubt that Yagüe's strength was low. A year ago, he couldn't even defeat a child. However, Yagüe had a lot of good stuff in his hands. If he could get a few of them, he might be able to win. Alright. Su Peng immediately nodded. I will ask Yagüe tomorrow. The next morning, Su Peng was surrounded by many students when he arrived at the academy. Du Laolu was caught? Although he was caught, he still acts like a man. He challenged Tuyu? He is definitely not Tuyu's match. What is he thinking? What do you think? In this kind of situation, even if they died, they had to fight. He abducted Shijie and ended up being caught. Now, Tuyu hates Shijie too. If Du Laolu were to cower now, I would look down on him. That's enough. Stop arguing. Su Peng had no choice but to shout, no matter what, Du Lao Lu is my brother. I will definitely help him this time. Everyone, help me think of a way to defeat Tu Yu. After that, everyone quieted down, frowning and thinking hard. Four-way heaven can't possibly win against Kismet heaven. Tong Lon snorted. It's impossible to win using normal methods, but if you want to use abnormal methods, you'll have to ask Yagwei, Shirgan said with a chuckle. Su Peng nodded and said, I think so too. I'll go and beg Yagwei later. Shirgan thought about it and said, I'll go with you. It's best to send more people. Tong Lon, are you going? Not going. Although Shijiwei is a little pitiful, I don't want to beg him. Are we going to beg Yagwei when he arrives? Su Peng asked. Let's wait until after school. After class, Rinpochen returned to his office and sat down. Then he saw a few people rushing in. They were Su Peng, Shirgan, and two girls. Teacher, Du Lao Lu has been captured and is now locked up at home, Shirgan said. I already knew about it yesterday. Rinpochen looked at everyone and asked, Did you guys come here to tell me about this? Su Peng quickly stepped forward and said, Teacher, please help Du Lao Lu. Teacher, please help Du Lao Lu. Du Lao Lu escaped with Shijiwei and is now hated by Tu Yu. Tu Yu will not have a good life if she marries him. Du Lao Lu has no choice but to challenge Tu Yu to a duel in a week. If it's a normal duel, Du Lao Lu won't be Tu Yu's match no matter what. Only you can help him. I can't help you with this matter. Rinpochen shook his head. Teacher. Su Peng was shocked. He originally had high hopes and didn't expect Rinpochen to reject him. Teacher, Du Lao Lu is a disciple of the academy. He has been studying in the academy for a year. If he can't even beat Tu Yu, it won't look good on you, right? Shirgan said with a smile on his face. That's right. Teacher, you have to help them. It will be bad if Shijiwei marries Tu Yu. Teacher, can you bear to see your students being separated like this? It's not that I don't want to help, but I can't. Rinpochen shook his head. The marriage was decided by the Tu and Shir families. Du Lao Lu and Shijiwei eloped because they abandoned their families. I'm your teacher, and what I do is to teach and dispel doubts. When I know that you made a mistake, I will punish you first and make you correct it. Did Tu Yu do anything wrong in this matter? No, they reap what they sow. That's why I won't help you achieve your goal to defeat someone who has done nothing wrong even though I know you're wrong. Rinpochen's words made everyone freeze. Therefore, I can't help you with this matter. Rinpochen put down the things, got up, and walked past them. I have some things in the office. If they are lost, all four of you will be punished to wash the toilet for a month. After he finished speaking, he didn't care about the others' reactions and went back to the palace with his guards. Tu Yu wasn't wrong in this matter, but his mouth was too smelly. What does Yagwei mean? Su Peng was a little stunned. Stupid. He already told you that the things are in the office. However, the four of us will be punished to wash the toilet for a month. The smile on Shirgan's face finally disappeared. When was the last time they had to wash the toilet? It seemed to be 2 months ago, and it was no different from yesterday. Didn't he disagree? Why did he leave the things behind? Su Peng didn't understand. If he agreed, it would mean that he interfered. He obviously didn't want to interfere in this matter, but we stole it ourselves, so we can't blame him. He will also punish us. Shirgan said with an ugly expression. He already made up his mind. You can do it yourself. I didn't have to come at all. The other 2 female students were also speechless. Let's wash it then. Su Peng grinned. Hurry up and find where the things are. It must be in a very conspicuous place, such as this box. Shirgan casually opened a box placed in the corner of the room, and sure enough, he saw a bunch of messy things inside. What are these? Do any of you know them? These are flash bombs which were used during the siege of Tianjin Basin. Shirgan took out a few flash bombs and said, No, there's a note on this one that says it's a stun bomb, and this one is a sonic bomb. Then he took out another one that was somewhat different from the flash bomb and said doubtfully, I don't know what this is. Qing Lian, who was walking past the door, saw the things in Shirgan's hands, and her expression suddenly changed. Others couldn't recognize them, but she could recognize them even if they turned into ashes. If possible, she didn't want to see them again in this lifetime. "Don't touch those things. Where did you get them?" Qing Lian quickly leaned against the window and shouted. "Do you know what they are?" Shirgan asked. "Stink bomb. The emperor of Great Xia was killed by this thing," Qing Lian said with an ugly expression. The few of them were shocked. Once they heard Qing Lian's words, they knew what they were. This was a great killing weapon. The problem was that this thing was used to perish together with the enemy. "There's also this. I remember that many adults wear this. It's sunglasses. It can block out strong light. Let's look again. There might be other useful things. Since we are going to be punished anyway, it's not a loss to take more. There are 2 sticks here. It's written, stun baton on them. The bottom of this shoe is full of nails, and a dagger can pop out from the front. Keep them well. We'll take them all away later." Yagüe really doesn't mean what he says. He actually prepared so many things and said that he didn't want to intervene. I knew it. After all, Du Laolu is his student. He can't possibly watch Du Laolu lose. Where's Yagüe's gun? Let's look. Chapter 677. The duel between Du Laolu and Tu Yu was only between the younger generation of the 3 families. The huge gap in strength between the two made the 3 families believe that this duel was just a formality. Even the Du family felt the same way. As a result, no one publicized it or paid attention to it. Even Tu Yu's aunt Tu Wan didn't care. To her, this was just a fight between children. If it wasn't for the elopement of Du Laolu and Shi Jiue, causing the 3 families to search everywhere, Tu Wan wouldn't have heard of this. However, the day before the duel, the Empress suddenly mentioned this matter and revealed that she wanted to take a look. While many people were puzzled, this matter also caught the attention of many people. The location of the duel was almost changed from a small courtyard to the square in front of the palace. When Ren Baqian heard this news, he immediately felt like he was lying in bed and got shot in the knee. If this duel was really held in the square in front of the palace, he would really be the scapegoat. The Empress wouldn't let him off. The big shots wouldn't let him off either. For the next 10 days to half a month, everyone would first have to stand in that overwhelming stench for half a day before going to court, and then go to court with that stench. That scene was simply unimaginable. Can't it be held in front of the palace? The Empress was puzzled when she saw Ren Baqian's big reaction. No matter what, it can't be. That's simply suicidal. Ren Baqian looked solemn. Did you intervene? What did you give him? The Empress asked. No, absolutely not. Ren Baqian repeatedly denied. In fact, he was in the wrong in this matter. Why would I intervene in this matter? Although I don't care, this matter was indeed caused by the 2 of them, and they should be punished, the Empress said. Your Majesty, do you still want to go and watch? Didn't you say it intentionally or unintentionally? Seeing that you have this idea, I will go and take a look. In any case, the students in the academy are as weak as you. The Empress raised her pinky finger. Ren Baqian saw that this matter couldn't be tolerated and had to prove himself. The brain is the greatest weapon. If we compete in mathematics, physics, and chemistry, I would like to say that there is no one in Dayo who can fight. Well, I understand, the Empress said perfunctorily. And then? Why not in front of the palace? I lost some things. One of them is a skunk bomb. Ren Baqian grunted. The Empress turned her head abruptly and sneered, Lost it? Ren Baqian replied seriously, It was stolen. The students these days even dare to steal the things I put in my office. I must punish them later. Forget it, I'm not going to watch anymore. Ask them to move the location further away. The Empress shook her head. His Majesty said that he was going to take a look today. It's not good to go back on his words. I feel that the location for the lantern grabbing contest is not bad. It's big enough and has good ventilation. The wind has been blowing from the southeast recently, so there won't be any problems as long as we sit in the wind shelter. Just after noon the next day, Rinpoche accompanied the empress out of the west gate. There was a large open space in the distance, and there were already people waiting there. Most of the 50 students from the academy had arrived. The people from the Du, Tu, and Shi families had also arrived and were sitting not far away from each other. Tu Wan, Tong Jinye, and Shi Qing had also come. Among them, Tu Wan came because her nephew and the empress was coming. Tong Jinye and Shi Qing came because Tong Lan and Shi Qing were attending classes at the academy. Naturally, they wanted to see how the students from the academy would fight against opponents who were one level higher than them. They might be able to watch a good show. There were also some mid-level and low-level officials who found a place to sit nearby. Most of them were from the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of War, and the Ministry of Appointments. They were old friends with the three families and wanted to see what the Empress cared about in this contest. When they arrived, the Empress lifted the curtain and casually said, "I'm just taking a look. You don't have to worry about me." She then drew a card from Rinpoche's hand. He frowned when he saw that there was an ace and a 2 in his hand. Rinpoche looked at the ace in his hand, chuckled, and extended his finger toward the ace in the Empress's hand. However, before his finger could touch it, the Empress's face turned black and her eyes emitted a cold glare. Rinpoche smiled at the Empress. "Am I the kind of person who would give up because of a mere threat? Am I that kind of person? Of course, I'm going to draw the 2 back." The Empress didn't wait for Rinpoche to retract his hand. She quickly took the remaining ace from his hand and threw it in front of her. "I win. This kind of small game naturally can't stump you, Your Majesty." Rinpoche laughed. The Empress then picked up a brush and drew a mustache around Rinpoche's mouth. She nodded and said, "This looks much more pleasing to the eye." Rinpoche pinched his chin and said, "Sure enough, I look more manly with a mustache." The Empress rolled her eyes at him, looked at the empty court, and asked, "Why hasn't the contest started yet?" "It's about to start. Don't be anxious, Your Majesty." Tong Jinye, who wasn't far away, stroked his mustache and gave the Empress a smile that said, "Do you think my mustache looks good?" The Empress's eyes twitched when she saw this. "It's time to go on stage," Rinpoche said. "Which direction is the wind blowing?" the Empress asked. Rinpoche stretched out his hand to feel the outside of the carriage and smiled. "Our position is downwind." "Your Majesty, why are you asking which direction is the wind blowing?" Tong Jinye was puzzled. "Nothing, I was just casually asking," Rinpoche replied. Tong Jinye nodded his head doubtfully and turned to look at the 2 people in the court. They were both 17 or 18 years old, but Tu Yu was slightly taller and more muscular than Du Laolu. Du Laolu looked like he weighed only about 100 kilograms, while Tu Yu was at least 150 kilograms. From their appearances, they didn't seem to be of the same weight class. Aboriginal men below the cardinal heaven level usually had a stronger physique and a weaker physique. As a result, it was easy to distinguish the difference in strength between them. Tu Yu was holding an iron rod that was as thick as one's wrist and weighed more than 50 kilograms. He looked at the tightly wrapped Du Laolu and sneered, "I didn't expect Your Majesty to come and watch. No matter what, the outcome of this contest has already been decided. This is your last chance, but it's a pity that you can't grasp it and can only struggle in vain. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too useless." It was unknown where Du Laolu got a cloak and wrapped himself up tightly. Only one of his arms was exposed and he was holding a mace. He didn't reply to Tu Yu. Instead, he turned to look at the crowd at the side of the court, the students from the academy, and Shi Jiwe, who was sandwiched in the middle with red eyes and a worried look on her face. Following which, he turned to look at Tu Yu and said, "Even if it's for Jiwe, I have to win even if I have to die." "If it's a contest of eloquence, you might really win," Tu Yu said sarcastically. "However, eloquence isn't as useful as strength." One of the guards from the Tu family walked to the center of the court. He raised his hand above his head and then waved it down. Immediately, a shallow scratch appeared on the ground, as if it had been cleaved by something. Chapter 678. Tuyu wasn't in a hurry to make his move. Instead, he put his hands behind his back, smirked, looked at Du Laolu and said calmly, "Do you want me to give you a handicap?" "Sure." Du Laolu replied expressionlessly. Tuyu was slightly stunned and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ha, good. Ha, you are honest this time." Tuyu was slightly taken aback. Then he couldn't hold back his laughter and said, "Ha, good. Ha, you're honest this time." Tuyu wiped the corners of his eyes after laughing as if he had just shed tears. Tuyu laughed, but Du Laoyo's expression didn't change at all. Shurgan and the others were laughing as well. Tuyu laughed, but Du Laoyo's expression didn't change at all. Shurgan and the others were laughing as well. "Let him laugh for a while more. I reckon he won't have a chance to laugh in a while." Su Peng sneered with his arms crossed. "Cleaning toilets for a month just for this scene? It's not worth it." Shurgan laughed halfway, but when he thought of his punishment, he couldn't laugh anymore. Tong Lan had gotten a 1-meter-tall tree trunk from somewhere and was swinging her legs on it. She glanced at him and said, "You're a fool." Shurgan's mouth twitched, but he didn't reply. A minute later, Tuyu saw that Du Laolu was still motionless and said impatiently, "Make your move. What are you waiting for? Don't tell me you're going to keep standing like this." "Can't wait anymore? Are you in a hurry to lose?" Du Laolu sneered. One of his hands was holding a cylinder in his cloak, and the other was hooked onto the ring. "Lose?" Tuyu laughed. "Are you kidding me? It should be this, right?" Du Laolu thought to himself and then exerted some force. With a soft sound he pulled the ring out. He then raised his arm, and the cloak unfolded behind him. Everyone then saw what Du Laolu looked like under the cloak. He was wearing a short skirt made of animal skin and had several ropes tied to his body. There were cylinders and other messy things hanging from the ropes. Tong Jingye and Tu Wan immediately turned around and stared at him. "Sir Ren." Tu Wan couldn't help but say, "It has nothing to do with me. Someone must have stolen something that I left in my office. When I get back, I will definitely find out who the thief is and punish him severely." Ren Baqian said solemnly as if it really had nothing to do with him. Since Ren Baqian said so, Tu Wan couldn't say anything else. She could only say resentfully, "I hope so." Du Laolu threw the cylinder in his hand at the other party, took off his sunglasses from the rope, and hung them on his face. Tuyu looked at the object flying toward him and said, "Small tricks." However, he took a few steps back. It seemed that he was still a little wary of this unknown thing. However, this vigilance did not make his next encounter any better. Bang! The stun grenade exploded in the air. The sudden appearance of an intense light was like the appearance of a sun. At that moment, everyone felt their vision go white. Apart from the white light, they couldn't see anything else. The accompanying loud noise made everyone's heart skip a beat. They had no idea what was going on. After more than 10 seconds, everyone gradually regained their vision and could see everything clearly. Everyone at the sidelines was in such a state, let alone Tuyu. Just now, he had been staring at the cylinder. In the end, he was blinded by the intense light and the loud noise at close range. He felt as if his head had been hammered, and he couldn't hear anything with his ears. The moment he lost his vision and hearing, he panicked. However, these Aboriginal youths weren't rookies who had never fought before. Even the children of the city officials had sparred with the guards and fought quite a bit. It could be said that every Aboriginal youth had rich fighting experience. After panicking, he immediately retreated frantically and circled around the venue according to his memory. "Damn it! As long as I can see again, I can easily defeat him." Tuyu cursed in his heart as he kept changing his position with his eyes closed. Even though he couldn't see, he was much faster than Du Laolu. Furthermore, the venue was huge, so Du Laolu had to constantly adjust his direction to intercept him. However, the sudden loss of his vision still caused him to stagger a little. This was the scene that everyone saw after they regained their vision. The right move. Many people secretly nodded in their hearts. Then, they began to wonder what was going on with the cylinder that suddenly exploded with a strong light and a loud sound. Everyone at the sidelines discussed spiritedly and looked at the Empress's carriage from time to time. After all, this thing was too recognizable. It was basically the right choice to look for Rinpoche for something that they had never seen before. Actually, it has nothing to do with me, Rinpoche said innocently as he sat in the carriage and noticed that everyone was looking at him from time to time. Who do you think will believe you? The Empress asked casually. However, this thing is really useful, especially at night. I brought some back recently. Your Majesty, get someone to send them to Protector Z and General-in-Chief who supports the nation for night attacks, Rinpoche said. These days, he would bring back stun grenades whenever he had nothing to do. Currently, there were nearly 10,000 of them in Pingle Park, filling up an entire room. All right. The two of them casually chatted and looked at the venue. Du Changkong had finally gotten close to Tuyu. His muscles bulged as he swung his mace at Tuyu. Clang! Even though Tuyu couldn't see or hear it, he could feel the sound of the mace piercing through the air. He immediately raised his iron rod to block the attack. Then he brandished the iron rod that weighed more than 50 kilograms and smashed it in Du Changkong's direction. Like falling rain, every hit of the rod created a pit the size of a wash basin. The soil around him was splashed everywhere. Tuyu pushed Du Laolu away with a flurry of blows, turned around, and ran away without thinking. Once again, the scene of Tuyu running away and Du Laolu chasing after him appeared on the scene. After such a long time, I'm afraid that Tuyu has regained his sight. It seems like I have to use a gun. Du Laolu thought to himself. Without any hesitation, he took out his pistol and pulled the trigger at Tuyu while chasing after him. Bang! The expected crisp gunshot didn't ring out, and the familiar bullet didn't shoot out either. Instead, a small flame appeared at the muzzle and was extinguished in an instant. Du Laolu was dumbfounded. With a look of disbelief, he pulled the trigger again, and a small flame appeared at the muzzle again. Another press, another spray, another press, another spray. What the F***CK? Du Laolu finally understood. This thing looked like a gun, but it wasn't one at all. Not only was Du Laolu dumbfounded, but Su Peng, Shurgan, and the rest were also dumbfounded. What kind of situation was this? That was a gun, there was no doubt about it. They had often seen Yagüe using it. After all, Yagüe didn't carry the big gun every day. He would often carry a small gun at his waist and use it to shoot people more than once or twice. Why wasn't it working now? The Empress looked at Rinpoche with an embarrassed look and asked, "What's this?" Rinpoche looked at the venue with a pained expression and said, "It's a lighter. They stole the wrong one. I've hidden AP-22. Chapter 679. Rinpoche looked at Du Laolu, who was waving his pistol while chasing after Tuyu, and felt his balls ache. He had clearly hidden AP-22 that wasn't very powerful and was used to educate the students so that they wouldn't be killed easily. Furthermore, he had deliberately hidden it in a very conspicuous place, in a flower pot. However, they actually found the lighter that he had hidden in the corner after playing with it for a few days. Instead, they couldn't find the P-22, which made him a little speechless. Stupid teammates, Rinpoche muttered in his heart. Du Laolu had really found a few stupid teammates. Du Laolu was also dumbfounded. Originally, he didn't dare to try it out because there were too few of them. He thought that since Yagüe had used it more than once, he might as well use it directly. Who knew that it was actually a lighter? Yagüe, why did you hide this thing in the office? You are simply killing me. Du Laolu threw the pistol away with a resentful look on his face. He was determined to go all out. He took out the stink bomb, pulled the ring, and threw it at Tuyu. The stink bomb began to emit white smoke while it was still in the air. A strong, life-doubting stench swept out from the center of the stink bomb. Tuyu was madly sprinting all the way to take a deep breath of fresh air. This smell, which smelled like 100 tires being burnt together and mixed with 82-years-old feces, suddenly rushed into his nostrils. That stench seemed to have solidified into a giant hammer, which was constantly hammered on his head and chest by 1,000 gene arm strength, causing him to almost suffocate and see stars in his head. At that moment, Tu Yu's mind went blank. He fell to the ground in a somersault, rolled 360 degrees on the ground, covered his nose, and began to violently retch. Even though Du Laolu was already mentally prepared for this, the moment he smelled the stench, he felt the same as Tu Yu. He first felt as if his head was being hit by a sledgehammer, and he began to interrogate himself about the meaning of life. Looking at the white smoke in the air, Tong Jinye's expression suddenly changed, and he disappeared in an instant. He was too familiar with that thing. He and Qin Chuan had thrown that thing under their feet and stood in it for a full hour. The result was mutual destruction. Tu Hong suddenly jumped up from the ground, stared at Ren Baqian fiercely, and asked, "You actually used poison?" "Don't worry, it's not poisonous." Ren Baqian replied nonchalantly as he stretched out his hand to see if there was any change in the wind direction. Fortunately, the direction of the wind hasn't changed. Ren Baqian said, "No poison? What's going on in the field?" Tu Hong asked as he pointed at the field. "If I say it's not poisonous, it's not poisonous. If you don't believe me, you can go in and try." Ren Baqian replied. Everyone was puzzled. They felt that Ren Baqian wasn't lying. It was impossible for him to lie at this time, but how could they explain this situation? "I have a room rat here. Its sense of smell is extremely sensitive. No poison can escape its detection." Du Laoyou's father waved his hand behind him, and someone immediately untied a cloth bag from his waist. Inside the bag was a palm-sized golden squirrel. The man took out another ball and shook it in front of the rat. The rat immediately showed a covetous expression. Then he threw the ball in the direction of the two, and Room Mouse immediately rushed in that direction. Then it fell to the ground before it was halfway there. "What a powerful poison!" everyone exclaimed as they shifted their gaze to Ren Baqian's face. Not only could this room rat distinguish between various poisons, but it also had a high resistance to poison. Ordinary poisons had no effect on it. However, it actually fell to the ground at this time. It was obvious that the field wasn't only poisoned, but it was also extremely powerful. "Ren Baqian, you still dare to say that it's not poisonous?" Tu Hong called Ren Baqian's name with a fierce look. If he wasn't still in the Empress's carriage, he would have rushed up and fought with Ren Baqian. Even Du Laoyou's father's face changed. "It's indeed not poisonous." Ren Baqian was also a little speechless. "Sir Tu, please say it." "It should be not poisonous," Tu once said. She had roughly guessed what was going on. "It's indeed not poisonous." Tong Jingye had returned with a sad look on his face. "The room rat is moving," someone shouted. The room rat lay on the ground for a while, twitched twice, then suddenly turned around and rushed toward the crowd. Its pair of round eyes were full of tears, and they fell drop by drop. When Room Rat returned to the Du family, the faces of the Du family members changed drastically. Their faces turned black. At this moment, the two people in the field moved again. "Du Laolu, how dare you use such a sinister trick? I'm going to kill you." Tu Yu regained his vision, got up from the ground, and lunged at Du Laolu while howling. Du Laoyou's face twitched as he took out another stun grenade. "Tu Yu, what do you think this is? Do you think I can fall for the same trick a second time? I'm going to kill you." Tu Yu covered his eyes with one hand and stood rooted to the ground. After waiting for a long time, he didn't hear the loud bang. He immediately put down his hand and looked forward. He saw Du Laolu holding a mace in one hand and a black rod the size of an arm in the other. The cylinder was gone. "Are you bluffing?" Tu Yu's face turned ashen. The stench was constantly stimulating his brain, making him even more irritable as he strode toward Du Laolu. However, Du Laolu suddenly retreated. Bang! The ground where Du Laolu had just been standing suddenly erupted with the same intense light that shone on Tu Yu. Once again, Tu Yu couldn't see anything but a vast expanse of whiteness. "At least he has some brains," Rinpoche praised. Everyone clearly saw that when Tu Yu covered his eyes, Du Laolu placed the stun grenade under his feet and stepped on the handle. As he stepped back, his feet left his original position, and the stun grenade exploded. "Don't panic. Although I can't see it, I can feel the wind brought by the mace," I'm faster than him, and as long as he attacks again, I can finish him off with one strike. Even if it's an exchange of blows, I can seriously injure him with one strike. Tu Yu suppressed the growing anger in his heart and forced himself to calm down. He had made up his mind to finish off his opponent even if he had to exchange blows with him. However, this time, Du Laolu didn't rush forward to attack like he did previously. Instead, he circled around Tu Yu twice from a few meters away before quietly approaching him like a thief. It's useless. As long as he wields his weapon, Tu Yu will be able to feel the wind. I'm sure that's what Tu Yu is thinking, the surrounding crowd said. However, unexpectedly, Du Laolu didn't have the slightest intention of wielding his weapon. Instead, he slowly extended the black rod in his left hand toward the metal rod in Tu Yu's hand. What's he trying to do? Everyone was puzzled. Something is touching the metal rod. To the right. Tu Yu suddenly sensed that something was amiss and revealed a sinister smile. This time, he absolutely couldn't let him escape. Zizi, the rod in Du Laolu's hand emitted a blue light, and an electric current passed through the metal rod to Tu Yu's body. Tu Yu's whole body started to tremble as if he had epilepsy. Idiot, I know you're waiting for me. Du Laolu sneered. However, the metal rod isn't a person, so your senses are slower. Furthermore, the metal rod conducts electricity. Seeing that Tu Yu had fallen to the ground, Du Laolu was a little worried and poked Tu Yu's body a few more times. Clang. Du Laolu casually threw the mace on the ground and turned to look at the crowd at the side of the arena. His face revealed an ecstatic expression. I won. I won. I won. Most of the people at the side of the arena were at a loss and in disbelief. They didn't know what had happened and couldn't believe that the battle had ended just like that. Today's battle had been inexplicable from start to end. That kid from the Du family was clearly a Four Directions Heaven expert. How exactly had he defeated Tu Yu? Why did both of them stop just now? If it wasn't poison, then what was it? What was that black rod? Why did Tu Yu's iron rod fall to the ground the moment it came into contact with it? What exactly happened? Who could explain this? Du Laolu dashed toward Shijue. Jiue, I won. Shijue's face was filled with disbelief and ecstasy at first. Just as she was about to throw herself into Du Laolu's arms, she suddenly froze. Under everyone's gaze, she turned around and ran away. Ran away. Ran away. Rinpochen stood up from the carriage, walked to the edge of the carriage, and looked at everyone. He coughed to attract everyone's attention before saying, "During this duel, someone stole something from my office and gave it to Du Laolu. I will go back to investigate and punish the culprit severely." Chief Ren, what exactly happened? Most people weren't concerned about what Rinpochen had lost. They were concerned about something else. How could Four-Way Heaven defeat Kismet Heaven? One must know that the difference in strength between the two was like heaven and earth. However, this battle had started with a dumbfounded expression and ended with a dumbfounded expression. Just like that, the Four-Way Heaven had inexplicably won. Chapter 680. Here, I want to ask you a question. What's the biggest difference between humans and beasts? Rinpochen jumped down from the Empress's carriage and raised his voice in response to everyone's doubts. Language? Emotions? Or words? Everyone was stunned to hear this. Although they didn't know what Rinpochen was talking about had to do with the battle just now, they couldn't help but wonder what the difference was between humans and beasts. It seemed that very few people had considered this simple question. Wasn't language, emotion, and words just a part of what Rinpochen was talking about? No, let me tell you that the biggest difference between humans and beasts is that humans use their brains and tools instead of relying on their instincts and sharp claws. Since our ancestors learned to use fire, humans have taken a completely different path from beasts. Since our ancestors learned to tie knots and record things, they have passed down the knowledge that needs to be passed down from generation to generation so that we can stand on the shoulders of our ancestors and pass on our wisdom. And this competition has shown the value of tools. A Four-Way Heaven expert can defeat a Kismet Heaven expert with a few small things. Although this isn't absolute, it has a very important meaning. What exactly are those things? Someone asked. Tools. Ren Baqian said resolutely. Some very cheap things. Ren Baqian walked a few steps away from Du Laolu and stopped. I'll deal with you later. First, throw those things to me. Ren Baqian frowned as he caught the 2 stinky stun grenades that Du Laolu threw at him. He held them between his fingers and showed them to everyone. These are stun grenades. They're very simple things that can be made from ammonium and magnesium, which can be found in plants and soil. In other words, plants and soil can be turned into these things after some processing, and they're very cheap. How cheap are they? If the process is up to standard, one can be made for a few dozen copper coins. As for the effect, you should have seen it. Even a Kismet Heaven expert will lose his vision and hearing for a short period of time at close range. Reaching the Kismet Heaven level at the age of 20 can be considered pretty talented. However, an ordinary person can make 10 or 100 of these things in a day. They can make 10 or 100 people lose their vision and hearing for a short period of time and be at the mercy of others. Without the use of weapons and tools, how many ordinary people could defeat a Kismet Heaven expert? 100 people? 1,000 people? This difference in the number of people is brought about by the tools. As for the key to Du Laoyo's victory, apart from the stun grenade, it was the stun baton, which is a tool that specializes in storing electricity. That's right, it's those lightning bolts that you've seen and feared. As long as there was a suitable method, this lightning could be used as a tool. Not only can it be used as a weapon, but it can also be used for other purposes. Needless to say, you will probably see it in a few days. What I want to say is that creating tools requires knowledge and culture. This is the original intention of my establishment of the Academy, to allow the descendants of the Aboriginals to learn this knowledge. Not for the sake of collecting trash. The Academy is not a garbage shelter, but a starting point to change everything. Perhaps to all of you, Du Laolu is just a martial arts cripple. You can ignore him and look down on him. Ren Baqian turned to the Du, Shi, and Tu families. However, to me, Du Laolu and the students in the Academy are the future of Dayo. They represent the height of Dayo's future. This is the reason why I'm here and explaining all of this to all of you. Ren Baqian's voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the surroundings. Everyone was bewildered. Ren Baqian's words had a huge impact on them and simply broke the values that they had always held. Yagüe is so manly today. The surrounding students clenched their fists tightly after hearing Ren Baqian's words. No one had ever made them feel so valued before, and no one had ever held them in such high regard. In front of so many people, the phrase, "the future of Dayo," really stirred up their emotions. Du Laolu, who was standing in the crowd, also looked excited. Everyone's facial expressions fluctuated. They had always wanted to deny Ren Baqian's words, but they didn't know how to refute him. The scene that just happened proved the persuasiveness of Ren Baqian's words. These two beliefs were fighting endlessly in their hearts. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out, "I don't believe it." Everyone turned their heads and saw a burly man walking out of the crowd with a gloomy face. It was Tu Yu's father, Tu Hong. In this world, strength is the only foundation. Our ancestors used strength to snatch a way out of the mouths of the beasts. We use strength to conquer Dayo in this world. I only believe in my own strength. Tu Hong said word by word. At this time, there were many people who had the same idea as him. No one was willing to be directly denied the foundation that they had relied on for so many years, but they didn't say it out loud. When Tu Hong stood up, there were many people who echoed his sentiments. Strength. That's right. Force is part of strength, but brains and tools are also part of strength. All of you only saw his martial prowess and nothing else, Ren Baqian said unhurriedly. Those are all heretics. Take the Yun nation for example. No matter how prosperous the heretics are, they are still vulnerable to the blades of Dayo's warriors. Very narrow-minded thinking, but it's not incomprehensible. In that case, do you want to compete with me? Let's see if these heretics are really as vulnerable as you think. Let's see if they are really as strong as you think. Ren Baqian tilted his head and smiled. Regardless of whether the other party was resentful about Tu Yu's defeat or had other thoughts, Rinpoche felt that he should let everyone know the power of technology. After coming to this world for so long, he had seen many experts and had a good understanding of the strength of a cardinal heaven expert. Even after seeing this scene with their own eyes, there were still people who objected. Rinpoche decided to take this opportunity to completely change their minds. A man-wheel expert defeating a cardinal heaven expert should be shocking enough. It should let them understand that strength didn't just come from themselves. As soon as Rinpoche finished speaking, everyone around him gasped. Rinpoche was only a man-wheel expert, which was equivalent to a four-way heaven expert from the Aboriginals. On the other hand, although Tu Hong had just crossed the threshold of a cardinal heaven expert, he was still a cardinal heaven expert. There was a difference of 2 levels between the two. It wasn't even enough to describe the difference between a baby and a strong man. He was simply crazy. A cardinal heaven expert wasn't a kismet heaven expert. Before Rinpoche could take out those things or even react, the battle might already be over. Chapter 681. Are you serious? An ominous glint flashed in Tu Hong's eyes. Are you looking down on me by challenging me? An ordinary person challenging me, a cardinal heaven expert? Do you think I'm made of clay? Tong Jingye and Tu Wan's expressions changed slightly. Rinpoche was too bold. He actually challenged a cardinal heaven expert to a duel. Was he really that confident in his stuff? Yes, but I don't want to fight anymore. It's not suitable for me. The simplest one is that you win as long as you can catch me. How about that? However, you have to hang a piece of iron on your body first. Rinpoche smiled and said meaningfully, how heavy can a piece of iron be? Are you trying to use this to slow me down? Tu Hong sneered. It's just a piece of iron. If you can catch me, then you win. Otherwise you lose. Rinpoche said. I promise you. What do you want to bet on? Tu Hong glanced at the Empress, but she didn't respond. Since the Empress wasn't going to step forward, he would let the other party know what the words cardinal heaven meant. The little things that he relied on were completely vulnerable in the face of real strength. I'm not betting on anything. Let's just fight for the victory, Rinpoche said faintly. Are you afraid of losing? Tu Hong sneered. I'm afraid that your family won't be able to survive if you lose. Rinpoche chuckled. Apart from some land and some gold and silver from looting the Hao Nation and the Yun Nation, what else did the Aboriginal officials have? Rinpoche wasn't looking down on them, but they were really poor. They couldn't even compare to a rich merchant, let alone the aristocratic officials of Great Xia and the Yun Nation. Do you think I will lose? Tu Hong bent down slightly and stared at Rinpoche. In any case, I don't think you will win. Rinpoche spread out his hands and looked down at his palms. I have calculated with my fingers that an auspicious day will be in 3 days. As for the location, let's still do it here. The time limit for the competition is 30 minutes. If you can't even touch the corner of my clothes in this arena, then there's no point in continuing, Rinpoche said. I don't need 30 minutes, just 30 minutes. Tu Hong raised his hands, spread his fingers, and then clenched them into fists. At that moment, Rinpoche seemed to have heard the sound of air exploding. 10 breaths is enough. Tu Hong repeated fiercely. Let's wait and see. See you in 3 days. Rinpoche smiled. He stretched out his palm and pressed it on his temple before swinging it forward. This was an irregular Huaxia military salute. Although the surrounding people didn't know what it meant, the students of the academy felt that it was very cool. On the way back to the city with the Empress suddenly said, even though the technology in your world is very advanced, I still feel that individual strength is the most important. It should be said that they are all very important. How could I not know the value of personal strength? It was just that they all focused on that one point and treated their personal strength as everything. I just want to show them that other things can also be powerful. What are your plans? The Empress asked. She didn't think that Rinpoche was going to lose to his opponent. You're not going to use poison or stink bombs, are you? Poison aside, although the stink bomb was disgusting, that was all it was. If the same level of strength was used all of a sudden, it could indeed disturb the opponent, throw them into confusion, and then take the opportunity to win. If the difference between the two sides is too great, it would be useless, the Empress said. How can that be? It's not like I don't know the strength of a cardinal heaven expert. Even though I don't understand it very clearly, I have a general idea of the situation. A spirit wheel expert's strength was about 3,000 kilograms, and an aboriginal cardinal heaven expert's strength was at least 4,000 kilograms. Of course, the bigger problem was speed. For a cardinal heaven expert, they could reach a speed of 100 meters in 1 second, so fast that ordinary people couldn't even react. I'm very clear about this. Renbachian looked at the Empress and smiled. Are you going to use poison? The Empress asked first. Of course not. That would lose the fun. Renbachian looked at the confused Empress and laughed. I think it will be very interesting. Your Majesty, do you want to make a bet with me? The Empress leaned against the animal skin and adjusted her posture to make herself more comfortable. She then revealed a languid expression and asked, What do you want to bet with me? Your Majesty, how about wearing a bikini? As soon as Renbachian said this, he felt a chill from the Empress. Since it's a bet, shouldn't it be bigger? Moreover, bikinis are considered normal clothing on Earth. Didn't Your Majesty see it? Renbachian replied nonchalantly. It's normal for them, but I don't like it. If you win, I'll kiss you. If you lose, the Empress said casually, I'll kiss you. Renbachian immediately said. The Empress spat at him lightly. If you lose? Oh, I really have to think about it. There doesn't seem to be much that I want. Forget it if you lose, promise me one thing. As for what it is, I'll tell you when the time comes, the Empress said after some thought. I'll do as you say, Your Majesty. Renbachian laughed. Lose? No way. After Renbachian and the Empress left, there were still many people who stayed behind and whispered to each other. The most excited people were the students of the academy, who gathered together to celebrate Du Laoyo's victory. However, they cautiously stood at the upper hand and maintained a distance of 20 meters. Well done, I finally have a whole new level of respect for you today. I didn't expect you to actually win. I'm a little surprised. Skipping levels, this is skipping levels, and you actually beat Tuyu? Ha. One had to know that Du Laoyo's competition wasn't as simple as him winning or losing. Instead, it gave hope to those students who were considered trash in the academy. Through this battle, they could see their future value, unlike before, when they didn't know where to go. Although Yagüe had said this many times, it wasn't as direct as this battle. If you do it again, I'll beat you to death. Suddenly, a voice was heard along with a strong stench, and everyone dispersed. No one knew when Tuyu had been lusted over by someone. It was obvious that he still couldn't move and was completely relying on the support of others. At this moment, he was staring fiercely at Du Laolu with bloodshot eyes. Losing to a four-way heaven wastrel was a great humiliation that he had never imagined in his life. He could imagine that he would become a laughingstock when he returned. Do you dare to compete again? Tuyu's eyes were red. You have nothing to lose now. Du Laolu stared at him without giving in. Furthermore, the next match is between your father and Yagüe. When the time comes, we'll be waiting to see the two family lose again. Dream on. Is that person worthy? Don't you know what a cardinal heaven expert means? My father will tear apart all the trash that you rely on, Tuyu said with an ashen face. We'll wait and see. Du Laolu laughed. Although a cardinal heaven expert is very powerful, I just defeated a Kismet heaven expert. It doesn't seem as strong as I thought. You! Tuyu roared, if you do it again, I'll definitely kill you. Du Laolu couldn't be bothered with him anymore. He turned around and chased after the students. Hey, wait for me. Hey, don't run so fast. Why are you hiding so far away? Chapter 682. As everyone returned to the city, the news of Du Laolu defeating Tuyu with his four-way heaven strength, as well as the duel between Renbachian and Tu Hong, spread to the ears of the officials in Lan City. Like a stone thrown into a calm lake, it set off a ripple. A four-way heaven defeating a kismet heaven was something that had not happened in many years. It was already shocking enough. A match between a four-way heaven expert and a cardinal heaven expert had never happened before. No matter how one looked at it, there was no comparison between the two. A cardinal heaven martialist could kill a bunch of four-way heaven ordinary people with a flick of his finger, let alone in a competition. Even the winged cavalry warriors and the people from the Ministry of Works, who had dealt with him many times, felt that this news wasn't real. This was too fake. When did he become so arrogant? Even if they were only competing in speed. If it was a competition of mathematics or something else, everyone believed that Bachyan would win. In terms of speed and strength, even 100 Rinbakians couldn't compare to one hand of a cardinal heaven expert. At this time, the people who believed in him the most were the students in the academy. After all, he had learned a lot in the academy and knew that he had all kinds of strange things. As a result, he trusted him very much. This was because he represented their future. Do you think Yagüe can win? After school, many students were discussing in the school. Even Du Laolu won. Yagüe shouldn't lose, right? But that's a cardinal heaven expert. Yagüe has more thoughts than anyone else. Since he dares to bet, he definitely won't lose. I thought so too, but I heard them talking about Yagüe the past 2 days. None of them are optimistic about him. Who cares about them? Even we don't know what Yagüe is capable of, let alone them. What can they know? If Yagüe wins, it will definitely be beyond their expectations. I can't wait to see their expressions. Someone started a bet. Yagüe will win, 1 to 10. I've bet all my assets on this. Who organized it? Hong Xian, White Tiger, Lu Royao and the rest. Heh, those fellows aren't the same as us. I'd like to see them lose all their pants. I still have 22 taels of silver. I'll give it to you when I get back. Help me put it all in. 3 days passed in a flash. At the same time on the 4th day, Rinbachian and the Empress arrived at the same place that they were at 3 days ago. Although there were quite a few people watching the competition 3 days ago, they were sparse in such a large venue. This time, it could be said that all the officials in Lan City who had nothing to do were here. They were all officials and their family members. Everyone wanted to see how Rinbachian dared to compete with Tu Hong, who was a cardinal heaven expert. One had to know that Tu Yu's defeat had caused him to lose face. Not only was his engagement annulled as promised, but he had also become a laughingstock in the city due to his loss to the four-way heaven. This time, even Tu Hong's face was on the table. If he lost again, the entire Tu family would become a laughingstock. Even Tu Wan wouldn't look good. Therefore, no matter what, he would not go easy on them. Therefore, everyone wanted to see this match with their own eyes. The first elder, the junior elder, the ministers of the 6 ministries, the various ministers, and the officials were all present. In a corner at the edge of the venue, a group of young men and women gathered together and joked, "Young Sparrow Hawk, you really put in a lot of money. Not only did you act as the banker, but you also bet 300 taels of silver on that person's loss. How could I let go of such a good opportunity to make money?" Lu Royao smiled happily. There was nothing more delightful than watching one's enemy lose and making money at the same time. Haven't you realized it after so long? That person isn't a fool. He's much smarter than most of us, Hong Xian said faintly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting in that position with such a low level of strength. I don't know what Her Majesty sees in him, right? Lu Royao was a little unconvinced. You underestimate Her Majesty. Although I'm not smart, I know not to underestimate Her Majesty's foresight. Another burly man said in a muffled voice. Young Sparrow Hawk, although my grandfather didn't say it, I can see that he thinks highly of him. You are blinded by hatred. Hong Xian's words made many people tremble in fear. Did Hong Wu think highly of Rinbachian? Tu Yu stood nearby with no one beside him. When he heard Hong Xian's words, his face turned exceptionally ugly. Just you wait. We won't lose this time. Your Majesty. Everyone stood up and bowed. Sit down. The Empress appeared in a flash on a chair that had been prepared for her. She rested her chin on one hand and waited for the competition to begin. When Ren Baqin walked past the crowd, many people gasped in surprise. Many people felt a suction force, causing their weapons to become restless. What's going on? This suction force disappeared in a flash, but many people still found the source. It was in a box carried by one of the guards behind Ren Baqin. The box was huge and 2 meters tall. Even 2 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. The outside was made of wood, and no one knew what was inside. It seemed to be something that Ren Baqin had prepared for this competition. As the guard entered the arena, everyone felt the suction force disappear. Those who were attentive would notice that there was no metal on the guard's body. Even the weapon that never left his body wasn't hanging on his waist. Tu Hong was already waiting in the arena. When Ren Baqin was 10 meters away from him, he said, "As I said before, you have to put a piece of metal on your body." Of course, I will also put a piece of metal on my body. We actually have the same idea. If you can catch me within 30 minutes, you win. Is it in the box behind you? Give it to me. I will let you know that your little tricks are useless against real strength, Tu Hong said as he looked at the box behind Ren Baqin. An earthwheel expert could carry that box, let alone Ren Baqin himself. Furthermore, judging from the trembling of the guard's footsteps, the box didn't seem heavy. Let's wait and see. Ren Baqin still said the same words. He turned around and pulled out a box from the top of the box. Following which, his face immediately became extremely strange, and his hands couldn't help but shake. Take the box away, Ren Baqin whispered. The guard quickly took the box away, and Ren Baqin's face gradually relaxed as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. After placing the box on the ground, Ren Baqin took out a metal hoop that was only slightly thicker than a person's waist. However, it was as thick as an arm and seemed to only weigh about 50 kilograms. This is it. Put it on your waist. Ren Baqin walked slowly to Tu Hong with the box in his hand. Tu Hong was a little puzzled as this thing was really too small. He originally thought that Ren Baqin was using a heavy object to slow down his movements, but how big was this thing? Only a few kilograms? Furthermore, when he took it, he realized that it was lighter than he expected. It was at most 10 kilograms. If it leaves your body, you lose, Ren Baqin said again. Pff. Tu Hong snorted coldly as he took the hoop and put it from his feet to his waist. It was slightly big, but there were some airbags inside the hoop. Ren Baqin stretched out his hand and the airbags filled the gap. The hoop was like a belt that was securely fastened to his waist. All right, before you lose, do you have anything else to say? Ren Baqin asked with a relaxed smile on his face when he saw that he had put on the bracelet. Me? Lose? Haha. Tu Hong suddenly burst into laughter when he heard Ren Baqin's words. You actually said that I will lose? I can't wait any longer. After laughing, Tu Hong lowered his head slightly and stared fiercely at Ren Baqin. He grinned and revealed his snow-white teeth like a wild beast. I can't wait to let you know that the thing you rely on is so weak and shatter that inexplicable self-confidence of yours. I will let you know what true strength is. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.